Hey everybody, it is Ben, aka the Fuse Box, coming to you once again with another Fuse Box engaged. I apologize for doing this a day late. Uh, Yesterday I had everything ready. I was gonna do my stream, and I just got super exhausted for reasons I'm not super clear on. I'm guessing it was like a caffeine deprivation thing, whatever. I just felt super tired and I just decided to listen to my body and get a little bit of sleep. And now I am here and I'm feeling pretty good. Uh, I'm long overdue for a vacation, however. And I am here once again with one of our regulars who loves to torment me to keep me on my toes.
I'm sweet little angel.
It's Rosetta. What's going on?
Oh, just you had to bring up the Bruce Almighty clip, so I was just looking it up to use on the thread.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Rosetta and I were involved in a theological battle on Twitter because I've got nothing else better to do. And also, I enjoy mixing it up a little bit every once in a while. Rosetta likes to mix it up quite a bit. I don't know if I have the patience for that. I pick and choose every once in a while. And sometimes theological debates are fun. Sometimes.
Okay, so let me kind of give a little context to this. Well, yes and no. I have like a dedicated hate community that will like start new accounts just to harass me. They'll look for like any benign thing I post and try to make like racist, derogatory, bigoted, anti-religious comments on it. So I have decided to have fun with this. And I was making fun of the people that were being bigoted on the Christian side, and it popped up this trend for atheism. And this was people talking about how they don't understand how there could be a God, or I believe what I can see and experience myself, or something like that. This was thousands of people posting vile, bigoted, derogatory, sexist, nasty, racist kinds of shit about people who are in the Christian community. And so I started calling it out because I don't like bigots in any side. I don't like bigots. And so I posted a little challenge after seeing thousands of these posts showing up everywhere for days that said that if you're an atheist, please come here legitimately, argue your viewpoint without denigrating, attacking others, or saying that they should be stripped of their rights, and tell me why you feel that way. Because I genuinely want to understand your point of view. And a few people have, politely, just with respect, and I've given each of them credit for it. But most of them, all they did was come to the threads and try to act polite for a few tweets, and then start demanding people's information on what their religion was, start gaslighting people saying they said what things they didn't, or start attacking religious groups. They can't argue their viewpoint based on their scientific belief. They have to argue their viewpoint based on attacking other people's belief.
Yeah.
And that's where this came from.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, you know, like I've got friends who are atheists, I've got friends who are agnostic, I've got friends who are pretty much most belief systems. I've known people like who are part of them, and I find like when you're able to respectfully exchange your own beliefs, you can grow from that. It grows your own perspective. And that's the best thing. And that's why like this shit of like, let's trash on each other, it's like, it doesn't really do any good for anybody. It just kind of closes doors.
I've been through periods where I didn't believe in anything but myself. I've been through periods where I was very, very stalwart, very shy, kind of traditional religious person. And I'm in myself, in my skin. I'm pretty sure I've come to understand what I believe is true for me. But I do not believe I have a right to dictate it to anyone else. And this is what I was trying to get across to them is nobody has a right treat others like shit just because they disagree with your viewpoint. Nobody has a right to say some people shouldn't be allowed to participate in the government or have rights or stuff. Nobody should have a right to go around and say we should eradicate religion and persecute people who spread it. And these people are actually openly saying this.
Yeah.
You don't have a right to force others to agree with you.
And a lot of those same folks are the people who claim that they're against racism and and sexism and homophobia and all that. But it's like, but you're okay being bigoted against something, just not about skin color or sexual orientation.
The thing that cracks me up with a lot of them is that if you push them long enough, they'll review bigotry against different communities and cultures based on not liking their religions, which is why I was intentional when he started demanding my faith to point out that, yes, I believe in some of the Christian ideals, but I am more the tribalist, the spiritualist, the naturalist, the theist and stuff. I am more a follower of believing, my belief is that God from Bible and God from Great Spirit in my tribe, at least because of how we viewed him and what we believe he did, are the same.
Well, yeah.
And so I was very careful to outline that, and he intentionally ignored every single part of it but Christian and tried to change my religion.
Yeah.
That was a test. It was a big test and he failed.
Yeah, I guess the best way I would describe my belief system, it's kind of weird, but it's like New Age Catholic combined with partial omnism. Meaning it's like I can recognize, I think there are truths in literally every belief system. I think there's merit in all of them, hence so many people flock to them.
Well, again, mythology and religion was how we explain the unexplainable as cultures as we developed. That does not mean what these people say it means, which means we're all just too simple to understand them. There's plenty of evidence that we had a lot more knowledge and technology long ago than we have today. So wash that part away. Stop saying just because people weren't educated or they were simple or shit like that. And realize that as a species, we're all simple. But we all had to explain things that were beyond definition.
Yeah.
And they still are. And that just because science doesn't understand how the spirit realm exists doesn't mean that it doesn't.
I would agree with that. And I think when it comes to spirituality, that's something that ultimately isn't quantifiable, because it's like when you deal with the sciences, you deal with the physical reality. You can't measure something that exists beyond this realm. So it's like, to try to approach it with the scientific method is kind of silly.
If you look up quotes, atheist quotes or quotes by known atheists, they are still running the same set of quotes from Penn Jillette from his career in the late 90s to about 2008. When he himself admits that he doesn't feel that way about his atheism anymore, because he himself has publicly said on multiple interviews that he was an anti-religious bigot in that era. And he has defended his religious friends sharing their faith with him, even if he disagrees.
Yeah.
So the fact that they use those quotes from him and they try to attribute that to how he still is, even though he has grown past that, and he's still atheist, but he doesn't treat other people like shit for it anymore, I think is incredibly disrespectful to him.
Yeah. I wish society could actually embrace the concept of religious freedom instead of just kind of talking around it.
Well, if you start talking to people and they talk about the biggest clue somebody's going to talk about stripping religious rights is when they try to pull the separation of church and state.
Because
was not in the Constitution. Yes, there's a separation of powers, but it's not the way they're using that term. They're using that term to say if you're religious, you have no right to talk about politics, you have no right to be involved in the system.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
You have no right to that didn't exist. And by the way, it doesn't exist constitutionally. The only place the phrase separation of church and state ever existed was in a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to a church promising that the state would not interfere with the church's religion.
And that's the thing. it's a two-way street. It's the idea that the church cannot influence government and the government cannot influence church, but they only see that one way.
But I think there's a little bias to how that's phrased too, because nobody, atheist, Christian, Buddhist, naturalist, New Age, whatever, nobody, no matter what your belief or lack of belief is, your moral code that you've gotten from what you've decided you believe in life will always affect your politics and what you vote for.
Yeah.
That's just the nature of the beast. The difference is we have to be aware that we can only use that towards other people when we're trying to defend rights of others. The reason that I say, yeah, I'm Christian and overall, my overall views lean to the right, but I tend to vote for more libertarian views on most topics, because the only place where I exempt the whole libertarian argument is when their rights supersede the rights and safeties of others.
Yeah. I totally agree
I
with
am
that.
Christian. I'm against drinking. I'm against gambling. I voted in favor of cities having the right to decide to have casinos and alcohol in places where it was being fought, because I don't think the government should be telling people whether they can or cannot gamble.
Well, yeah, there's way too much of the federal government mandating things to be legal or illegal, when it's like that's always, like, even beyond just a religious perspective, that's supposed to be how it functions. Like, the states are supposed to have their first priority on what's legal or illegal in the states. The federal government's not supposed to be messing with that, but they've been messing with that.
What a lot of them
50 years.
mess up, and what a lot of people say and claim now is they do the, well, if you want to try this social experiment, try it in your state. It's like, your state does not have a right to supersede the Constitution and erase your constitutional rights.
Yeah.
Ever. And I'm sorry, if what they want to run a social experiment on and try as a policy overrides part of your constitutional rights, you do not have a right to do that as a state.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Hell yeah.
See, I will defend people on both sides, because I think everybody needs the maximum liberty allowed without interfering with the safety and rights of others.
I totally agree with that. I mean, that's basically that's what the Constitution and the Declaration spell out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I take a libertarian stance with most things. Because, I mean, I feel like the federal government has usurped way more power than it was ever meant to have. Although I know that some of the founders would probably disagree with me, but
not many.
Whatever,
you'd be surprised how limited they actually were in what they viewed the government could do. But there were
I have a
some.
feeling Thomas Jefferson and I would not be good buddies.
Probably on some things, but he wasn't as government-centered as a lot of people claimed he was either. The truth is kind of in the middle on him. And that's the other dangerous part of most of these topics and issues. People will manipulate the facts to defend whatever viewpoint they are trying to push, an agenda they are trying to push. And if that means lying about somebody and their past actions and their dictations, so be it. I am very much, for liberation of anybody as long as they're respecting the rights of others. I don't like the glorification of Lincoln, because while he did do good on, freeing black slaves and stuff like that, he was actually very anti-Asian and Native, and actually did a lot of things to remove rights from them. And you can't give him credit for one without criticizing the other. It's like the people that decided to tell me that I was racist because I told them I wouldn't celebrate Juneteenth. It's like, how, as a Native woman, am I supposed to celebrate a proclamation that was intentionally written to exclude calling my people and my family human? Which it was. They intentionally wrote the 13th Amendment to exclude us. That's why they had to write more later.
Hey.
So that's not racist for me to stand against something that still violated the rights of my people. Actually, I would argue it's kind of racist to expect me to celebrate it just because it did something good for their community.
Yeah, I just, I the biggest reason I don't celebrate a lot of these new holidays is just because I feel like most of them are performative. It feels like it's just another version of virtue signaling. It's just people
Well, to be
coming
fair,
out.
with Juneteenth, it has been kind of a thing for a long time. It's just not talked about often, but it is based on when they signed a bill. So it's not really new, but it's not really anything either. It's a nothing burger that doesn't mean much because the
It's just,
bill only actually helped the rights of one specific group.
well, again, like I just feel like it's like over the past 10 years, everybody just started becoming hyper focused on race and sexuality and everything to the point where it feels like we've been moving backwards from where we were headed originally. It feels like it's defeating its own purpose to me.
It is
I might be
because
wrong, but
we're be- the thing is, I've always argued as growing up in a mixed family that there's no such thing as reverse racism because the word by definition, if you judge any race as inferior or superior or not able to be held to the same standards as another, that's racism by the definition. So literally there are
yeah,
phrases like reverse racism or white people are only racist or blacks can't be racist, shit like that. Those phrases are all racist.
I would agree.
And
Yeah,
it's the same thing with what's going on in Rapid. I don't know if you've actually been following the stuff I've been talking about that's happening in Rapid City here.
I think I saw one of the tweets, but I don't know if I
Okay,
don't think I
so
went too deep into it.
to be fair, since we've gotten a little political in this one, anyways, I'll explain this as simply as I can. March 19th, in a hotel in Rapid City in South Dakota here, a Native man was murdered in the hotel. The hotel owner, instead of saying, let's investigate what happened, or let's find out why this poor man was murdered, went on a drunken tirade publicly, calling natives all kinds of slurs that were all criminals, that were not welcome on her properties and her businesses, all this other stuff. And she has been caught repeatedly, documented cases of her doing exactly that, refusing people rights and entry based on race. That's where it started. That's bad enough, especially since she's blaming the race of the person that was murdered.
I feel
This
like
is
we
Civil
have.
War shit.
I feel like our nation has like nobody in our nation really has room to be critically judging the Native Americans. Like, I hate to be that guy who brings it up, but it's like, come on, we fucking like we screwed over the Native Americans like every which
And
way.
yet, I'm critical of people within my community and my race who have allowed it to become a reason to be bigoted to others. And I've spoken out on it many times. But this woman, this is psycho shit. So the mayor of Rapid City took her public posts that she made about this drunkenly and shared them out and called her out for violating civil rights. I support that. She started attacking the mayor and trying to file lawsuits against him, saying he can't talk about what she's posting publicly and you're taking it out of context and you're supposed to stay in your office and never speak and stuff like this. It gets crazier. This woman is on video assaulting the protesters with cleaning chemicals and stuff in the face. And the protesters who were in the public parking lot to the business next to it and the sidewalk, they weren't even on her property. Who happened to be one of the heads of the council for the tribe, so she's going to have a lot of fun with that legal fight. She has done all kinds of shit like this. She is refusing access and right entry to natives, whether or not I necessarily agree with forced service laws, because I've always said I think the bigots should just out themselves. She's outing herself, and she's feeling the consequences. She's had workers walk out. One of her own sons is suing her, trying to get the businesses taken from her and the brothers that are defending her. I mean, this is massive. This is like 60s civil rights era war shit happening. And
Jesus.
I got into it with people. And the reason I got into it, it's not just because the media is covering this up and hiding all the posts and comments about people making. That pisses me off anyways. But then you had this group of occupiers and BLMists who used it to try to run around and say all this shit about conservative states and white people and rich people and stuff like that, and attack the city and attack the state. And I'm start going, you know what? The city you're talking about, most of the population is at least part native. It's not. There's racist issues. I've talked to you about some of the ones I dealt with as a kid, being mixed in, with the albino and all that. But the majority of the city is good, and the majority of the city is the race and culture you're claiming you're trying to defend by attacking the city. So that's not okay. And it just because this woman is a flaming racist bitch does not give you a right to racially slur every person of the same race or culture as her. And the moment I say this, the responses that I get from them are, well, you're making this about yourself. It's like, you're a BLM person from your own account listed that you're in the South and you're African. I am Native. This is my home city. This is my tribe she's persecuting. My siblings, my family are hosting the protests against her, and I'm helping organize them. This is fucking about me.
But virtue signal.
Yeah, and they can shove their virtue signals right up their fucking ass.
But white people, corporate America.
You know who one of the people who's been helping track down every business this woman owns is and trying to help shut her down? My brother's wife, who is as Celtic redhead as you can get.
Yeah, but that's...
So what about white people? She's the one helping fight this.
But white people, they're evil. They're inherently evil.
They always make this deal about talking about when mass shootings or hate crimes or stuff are targeted against minorities. What about when it's the other way around? Are we allowed to acknowledge that that's still bigoted, that still happens? Are we allowed to acknowledge that there's... Because this goes to this whole atheist thing where they're trying to hate themselves as more moral than Christians. In that same city, a while back, over a decade, in fact, there was an attempted mass shooting on a church by an atheist from my tribe. Who said specifically he wanted to kill religious white people. So how are you going to paint this one? That's still white people and religion at fault, right?
Well,
now,
we're going to cover it up.
Do you know why he failed? Do you know why he failed? Because this is a pro-gun area, and he was driven out of the church by armed citizens who had their guns with them. He died. And unfortunately, so did a couple cops in a shootout hours later, when they finally found him after he fled. And these cops that he killed were Native. They were friends of my brother. So how is this a problem with white people? Not everything's race. His motivation was race, but it was also Natives who were defending the white people and trying to stop them too. So how do you define race? My mom, you know what AIM was, right?
AOL Instant Messenger?
No, AIM. Way before that. AIM was the Native equivalent of Black Panthers. It was the American Indian movement of the 60s and 70s. It was Russell Means. It was the stuff they talked about in Thunderheart. This shit was happening where there was racist shit happening on the reservations. There were riots happening on the reservations. Some were legitimate, where people were being persecuted as being Native. Some were bigotries that had harbored in people's hearts because of the past, and they weren't legitimate. They were racist Natives wanting to go after anybody who they felt wronged their ancestors. And I have family on both sides of that equation in that argument, both the ones who were legitimately fighting the persecution and ones who were becoming the persecutors. So my mom AIM came from Standing Rock. Now, modern era people hear Standing Rock, they think Keystone, right? Pipeline.
Oh.
AIM came AIM came out of Standing Rock Reservation where all that was happening. In the 70s is where it became very big on the reservation. My mom, who's lived on multiple reservations, my white mother's lived on the reservations. My native dad never did in his entire life until nope. So that's an interesting one anyways, but that's a long story. She lived on Standing Rock for a while in the 70s while all the race riots were happening there. She and her mother were actually helping the natives there fight for their equality, and she was beaten, tortured, and hospitalized by a group of girls for being white. You cannot tell me that racism is a one-way street.
So when's Ragnarok happening?
The world is losing itself though, because all that happening in the 60s and 70s, and for a while we had come out of most of those bigotries. Yes, there will always be bigots, but we had gotten so much better in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, I would agree.
And we're losing it. We're becoming more divided. We're becoming more racist.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I just see it happen. I just remember the first time I started encountering, I guess, woke logic. It was actually, I went on a date with a black woman who started bringing all this shit up, like woke shit, like talking about how white people were evil and were controlling everything in the world. And I remember I was just really taken aback by that, because I'm like, well, I think world politics are a little more complicated than that. And so I started bringing that stuff up, and she was just really starting to get really pissy with me. And then I think toward the end, she was trying to get me to admit that I had white privilege. And I basically said something to the effect of like, well, I mean, I recognize that in my life I've been blessed. And that just offended the hell out of her. She was like, blessed? And then she got up and she left. Because I said I was blessed.
The thing is, you can acknowledge, and we've talked about that, I have actually seen some of the persecution that a lot of people talk about. We've talked about some of the stuff that was done to me for being mixed race, for being pale, for being native, that I've been through. That does not mean that other people haven't faced persecution just because of their skin. In fact, part of why I have faced as much as I have is because of being pale-skinned as a minority. And that's my other minorities doing that to me.
And I know that one of my uncles back in the day when he was in high school, he and my mom both went to a primarily black high school down here. And my uncle used to get his ass kicked after school quite often for being white. So.
And that's the thing. This is why I speak out as much as I do, though, because I really think we have to start calling out all these bigotries. We have to start calling out by name what these people are, because we cannot stand for this stuff to continue to grow. We just can't.
I mean, a lot of folks have been. It's just it's kind of an uphill battle at the moment. But I mean, I do, from everything I've been seeing lately, it looks like culture's finally kind of reached a point where it's like, okay, we're getting sick of this crap. Like, you know. I mean, I think there is a turning point happening, albeit it's happening kind of slowly. But
I hope for it. I pray for it, but I'm very cynical. Does that make sense?
No, I totally agree. It's the whole expect the worst, hope for the best mentality.
The thing is, I've seen so much bigotry, and honestly, most of what I've seen, it is getting worse on the white right too. The alt-right is real. But I have seen so much bigotry from my fellow minorities for people being mixed, for medical conditions that make you paler skin, for all that stuff. The bigotry level on those is insane. And it's minorities like that. The biggest racial hatred right now is between Asians and Africans.
Hmm.
It's
I have
black
been seeing
versus
some of
Asian.
that.
That is globally the biggest racism right now.
Yeah.
And they're still trying to
I.
blame it on white people.
Ay.
It's like, I'm sorry, nobody white made you beat up an elderly Asian woman for being Asian.
Yeah. I'm not really getting. I don't understand where that one is stemming from. Like in terms of historical.
I will say, from what I can see that's happened within those communities, it started with China's negative images they always spread constantly about black communities, and in that regards I can understand why the black community has reacted to it the way they have, but you're becoming bigots you claim to be speaking against.
Well, I do remember like around the time the good old virus of unknown name and origin started.
COVID-19?
Yes. Around the time it started, I remember China was like, as part of their, I guess their public relations campaign, they tried to blame it on immigrants coming in from, I think, like Kenya. And they started actually doing the old South way of, like, oh, black people aren't allowed in this business and not in that business and not in that business.
There's been a very
like,
negative viewpoint of black people in Asia for a long time, not just China, but in most of that region of the world. And like I said, I understand why the black community got angry at it, but you can't let yourself become the enemy you're fighting.
Yeah.
Once you become the enemy, you've lost.
Yeah. But
and I'm
go ahead. I was just saying on a slightly different note, we've managed to get about 107 signups on the email list for Outlaw Nights.
Oh, by the way, and which crazy person interviewed you and has been pushing people to sign up for the last couple weeks?
I believe it was I think it was graded 0.5. I don't know. Yes, thank you.
You fucking asshole.
And yeah, we got up to 107, so it is now time for me to schedule the launch of this thing, but I have decided to publicly poll to see what people have to say about when they think would be a good launching time, because with the way things have been going with the indie comics boom, I have no real way to gauge when would be like the best month to launch this thing. I back in the day, I remember it was always like, oh, launch during like April and May because that's like the beginning of summer and all that. But I mean, like, things have been changing so rapidly. I don't even know if that is still the best time, because I mean, I feel like everybody's has launched this summer. So I put up this poll here on my Twitter, and so far, the September-November range is winning in the polls. Although August is coming up on it. But, I mean, I feel like August still feels kind of soonish to do it, because...
What I was thinking is no matter how much you got ahead of time, once you find out, you're still going to want a little time to really set up. And I thought about August, but then I thought that's a lot to do in a very short time. And Indiegogo is not simple to fill out. It's not easy to set up a campaign. There are pages and pages and pages of complex questions and all kinds of information and bank information and all this stuff to fill out. And it's a headache.
Yeah.
So pushing yourself to do it within a few weeks with all the stuff you have to do to get ready, I think is pushing too fast, honestly.
I would agree with that. Yeah. And I mean, like normally, like I think with the first campaign, I managed to set up the Indiegogo page after about a day. It took me a while, but I mean, I was dead focused on it.
I
But
cannot figure it out. It may just be my learning issues, my learning disabilities, my being very kinesthetic and tactile. So it's a very logic based, almost mathematical. How simply and how logically they want you to do everything. It goes right over my head. It just doesn't make sense to me.
it's a little daunting. It is. But I mean, if you have like a good day to yourself to do it, like it can be done. It's just you want to make sure to have all the
It might
materials.
be for you. It's not for me because I've literally spent days poring over it and I can't understand it. So,
I mean, that's fair.
but I
You know,
acknowledge I have never hidden the fact that I have brain issues and learning disabilities. I've never hidden that. So, my situation with it's not going to be most people's, you know?
the biggest advantage I have right now is that I pretty much don't have a life at the moment. So, you know, one of my best friends works Whole Foods, and apparently that's just too much for him to be able to do that and hang out. You know who I'm talking about, Nick. God damn it. And then my other best friend, we hang out about once a week and we talk about
I'm shocked. You have more than one friend?
yes. And my other best friend and I, we talk about this mythology that I've been planning behind the scenes. Because I do want to actually, I've been thinking about launching that as a possible comic series eventually. But I want to get more of a foothold going with the Outlaw Nights before I think about branching out. And I actually sent you the stuff on my mythology a while back, and I get the vibe that you did not read it.
I started to and then I lost the link, so I read part of it. Sorry,
That's okay.
I really did see, and I've been going through a lot.
No, everybody I've sent it to has been like, "Oh yeah, I glanced at it once. Yeah, yeah. Okay, Ben, go work on
Yeah,
your
but to be
little."
fair, you know what's been going on with me the last several months.
No, I know. No, I sent it to one of my exes to read, and she never read it. I sent it
The
to
other issue I have right now, and I will tell you this, so if you want me to remember links or find things again, send them more than once, send them a few times, because you know how every so often Twitter will like glitch and it'll constantly lose everything in a message chat between you and this group or you and this person, and it'll just be blank.
Yep.
It's been doing that like crazy, and I have almost no messages left from almost anybody. I just have a whole bunch of tabs where if you click on them, it's just a blank chat.
Oh, most of my chats are just different Twitter advertisements. You know.
Well, that's just because people don't have much interest in you.
I mean, yeah.
One of these days, I'm going to piss him off enough that he's actually going to tell me to go fuck myself.
No, it takes a special kind of insult to do that to me. Like
I'll figure out what type.
If you started acting like the dude I was mixing it up with earlier, then yeah, I'd probably,
Well,
I'm
to
the
be
type
fair,
of
I
guy
can't
where,
act like him. I have a brain cell and my head isn't up my ass, so I can't act like him.
well, no, he was deliberately trying to push my buttons. Like, it was obvious. He was talking down to me, and every time I make
Well, that's the
like
thing.
anytime I make some kind of an argument, he had to like dismiss it as like, well, that's just dumb because I've read this person who totally debunks that, and you better go read that. It's like I'm not gonna go off and read some diatribe by somebody you're a fan of. It's like, why don't you tell me in your own words why I'm wrong on this?
You notice also, it wasn't just that he kept trying to make us read other people and stuff. He could not argue his point. All he could do was attack what we believe, which is why he had to have my religion, which is why he had to lie about what I said my religion was.
Yeah.
Because he has no argument for his viewpoint. All he has is bigotry and his head so far up his ass he can't see his own. Never mind.
You can't.
All I'm gonna say is it's really impressive when your head is so far up your own ass you can't even see your own balls.
Oh, balls. Balls.
Or what's
Lordy.
the old saying? I tried seeing your point of view, but I don't have a glass stomach.
Lordy, lordy. This is a quiet evening of a fuse box engaged, and I think it's because I did it a day
I'm in a
late.
mood tonight, and I'm going to blame. Well, honestly, I'm on hormone therapy, so if I'm a bitch, I don't fucking care.
I mean, so far you've been pretty tame with me. Which
Actually,
is,
considering what kind of shit I'm talking about that I've been dealing with, and the kind of bigots that I've been dealing with, I think I've been holding my tongue pretty well for what I'm going through.
yeah.
Especially for
But,
me, because I'm just a loudmouth.
The people need to vote on this poll. They have to.
I did.
It's vital to the survival of the human race. Ragnarok is coming. And not the Taika Waititi Ragnarok, the real Ragnarok. Odin and Thor and all of them are going to be up against it. And the forces of Loki and Fenrir and the world serpent. It's going to be
This
one
is when
hell
Ben
of a
starts
bloodbath.
huffing his own farts.
Well, how fair do you think it was that Balder was killed? He was beloved by everybody. But Tom Hiddleston just had to be so jealous.
It's a weird situation we're in recently.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you're killed by a mistletoe arrow, shit. That's just the worst.
For all this race, basically pimping, pandering that Disney does, there's some really racist shit they've done too. Like, replacing the Ancient One with one of the whitest people on Earth.
Oh, that. I didn't really mind it so much. Like, there's some race swaps I'm not it doesn't bother me as much.
That one actually bothers me more than some because it was supposed to be a character specific to a specific race and religion. And that's the ones I have a problem with, is when you're actually screwing with cultures.
I can see that. So far, the main race swap that's annoying me is Rings of Power. And that's just because it just breaks the lore and everything. It completely takes me out of the immersion. Because it's Middle Earth is entirely based on genealogy and origins. And it's now you've got this ethnically mixed cultures with no real explanation as to why they're ethnically mixed, or where the different ethnicities even come from.
Is all these people going, well, you just don't like it because of this, and this. You do realize if they had actually done it more traditional to how it was written in the books, they actually could have been a better argument for their pro-trans, pro all this stuff, because gender norms were thrown aside for the dwarves in Lord of the Rings. The women looked like the men. They had beards. They were positions of power, all that stuff. The women were not different than the men. The men and women were equal. And you could have used that to really push the gender norms or bullshit narrative without actually breaking the lore or disrespecting the original writing.
And there's one thing that I've noticed a lot of folks who are on the anti-Rings of Power train, like I am, a lot of them have been making a bad argument where they show a ruling queen in Numenor, and they're all like, "Oh no, no, no! There's no ruling queens in Numenor. That's bullshit." And it's like, well, no. If you read the book of the Silmarillion, you'd know that Numenor was actually advanced in terms of gender equality. Numenor had several ruling queens who had all the sovereignty of a king. And it was actually the first society in Middle Earth to do that.
However, and this is where I will argue that, but not that you were wrong on that part, but their queens, again, looked like the men, acted like the men, had the same viewpoints generally as the men. It was not a, look at this dark skin, I'm done up like an African queen, Yaz queen style. There's the difference.
There weren't any black Numenorians.
And the thing is, they wanted to go into mythology and bring in other skin races. There are specifically described, even in the Tolkienian stuff, it actually talks about the fact that some of the Eld tribes they ran into in the different books were dark-skinned. It didn't describe them as necessarily African or Hispanic or other stuff, it just described them as darker. But it was actually defined that way. And you could have easily given it to them, and you even could have done things to give them places where they could showcase their power, strength, and stuff, and still be true to the story. There was no reason to do the swaps and sit there and attack your author and say that he was this and this. Actually, if you read the book, he was very forward in thinking of women's rights, women being strong, racial unities, and stuff like that. They're very open in the story he created. Look at Erwin, for fuck's sakes. And that was in the book.
Yep. And also,
literally, the reason she was powerful enough to beat him was because she was not prophesied against because she wasn't a man.
And I mean, even if you go to the Silmarillion, you've got Luthien was pretty much able to use her magic to subdue Morgoth himself. And then you had the people of Haleth. Haleth was a ruling chieftain, and she was a woman. And you had, and again, like I said before, you got several ruling queens of Numenor. And I think one of their ruling queens was like the best ruler that Numenor had. So I mean, you had a bunch of things.
They can't show this side of Tolkien's writing because they can't show that an old world Catholic actually was very forward thinking in gender norms and respect to women and minorities, and actually on the progressive side to the whole trans and gender arguments in that era. They can't show that because they would have to show he's not a bigot.
Well, I think you're giving him too much credit. See, I think most of the people involved in this show probably didn't even read those books.
Oh no, I think most of the people arguing. I think most of the people arguing for this show didn't read it. I think a lot of the stuff that a lot of these people are doing with these race swaps and stuff is intentional to destroy the mythos and history of these different cultures, including the minorities.
Kind of, yeah. Like, I think some folks are offended by the fact that, like, I think in Tolkien's mythology, you would basically say that the black people come from Far Harad, and like the Haradrim themselves were kind of like, I guess, black or Egyptian.
I will say, if you pay attention to that era, the most blatantly, openly calling out certain cultural behaviors in certain race was actually in his friend Lewis in Narnia. If you actually read the books, he really called out the Middle Eastern culture.
Uh-oh.
He did. And again, he wasn't wrong either. He didn't say every person from those places was evil. He said that their culture was this way, in this oppressive thing, and it was and still is in a lot of ways. But if you actually read it, he was accurate and he wasn't hateful. But still, he called out a specific region of the world. And
yeah, Tolkien didn't really do that. I know, like, Tolkien mainly just, I think the idea, like, that people get uppity about is the idea that, like, oh, the people of Harad and the Easterlings, oh, they serve Sauron, so you're saying those races are evil. And it's like, well, it's not to say that. It's to say that Sauron was incredibly clever and devious, and he was able to trick people into thinking he was a god.
That's like saying that every race or every culture that's had a dark religion or culture at some point is all evil. This is the same. No, that's bullshit. And most cultures have had dark periods. It doesn't make the culture evil. It means eras fall. People do stupid things. It doesn't mean the people are all evil. It never has.
Yeah. Especially since I think a lot of the early men mentioned in the Silmarillion, a lot of them were kind of the same skin color and culture as the Easterlings, and most of them ended up making up like some of the father houses of the elf friends.
But the reason I talk about it, everyone knows that Tolkien and Lewis were friends and that they bounced writing ideas off each other, right?
Yeah.
In The Horse and His Boy, in Chronicles of Narnia, it starts in the East. And it's a very obviously Middle Eastern culture as you read it. The boy flees the culture because of it. In that time, the book is set in the time while the siblings were the kings and queens of Narnia. And the men in that Eastern country actually tried to force Susan to stay to become a wife against her will.
Lordy.
Yeah.
I wasn't as big on the Narnia books as I was on Tolkien.
I'm very into literature in general, and I always actually loved, because again, when they wrote those novels, they were both trying to come up with fantasy ways to tell a lot of the religious stories that were important to them, and they actually competed with each other on who could tell the biblical stories in the most creative way. And so studying the difference between them, I actually find really deep as a way to understand both of them in writing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think, I know like with Tolkien, he said like when he first started off, he didn't intend to really have religious themes in it. They just kind of came out because of his own perspective.
It was yes and no.
He ended up kind of changing towards that bent.
It was yes and no, and I say that because I've actually read a lot of the notes the family put together based on the stuff he wrote directly to Lewis and in his own Bible's subnotes about what he was writing based on it. The stories originated as silly fantasies with a moral that would point at least towards faith without being direct for his kids. And then when he started telling his friends about them, they decided to compete to see who could tell biblical stories in the best fantasy way. That's when it started being altered. So most of the time he was writing it, he was writing from the religious perspective, but it started more as a more kind of like Hans Christian Andersen, Aesop, and them telling fables with a moral, but not directly pushing a religion.
And you could definitely see in The Children of Hurin, like that story is super based on Oedipus Rex. Like,
there once was a man named Oedipus Rex. You may have heard about his odd complex. He appears in Freud's Index because he loved his mother. Sorry, I spent too much of my life listening to Dr. Demento's show. Oh,
what's
for fuck's sake.
What's going on? Hello?
This is Ben keeping the black guy muted. I mean...
No, I don't...
No, I don't, so I just had to say it.
I'm trying to figure out... Black guy, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Hey!
Well,
which black guy is this?
I'm on my phone, so it says black guy. It's the woke breaker from last time.
Ah.
Okay. I was like, what? I mean, I do prank names on mine too. I'll pop into ones where it'll say like Savage Wench and stuff like that, and I'll be like off camera and bullshit. But
Yeah, I don't use my phone often on here, so it's just I wasn't logged in.
Nice. We were talking deep about Tolkien.
I love Lord of the Rings, but I'm more normie-ish. But literature-wise, I wish they would leave it alone.
I
would say. I mean, I love Lord of the Rings. I love Lewis's work. Actually, with Lewis, I would rather go to things like Screw Tape Letters and some of his more in-your-face stuff. But I love Madeline Engel, and she was a little bit of a. She believes Christian, but she tended to believe that not all people of other faiths aren't necessarily following the Christian ideals just because they didn't learn the same faith or God name. And she had some really deep, both scientific and theological stuff in her books. And so it was great to bounce between that because she was a scientist for a long time. She's also a religious person. In her books, she came up with things like the Tesseract and stuff like that. You all kinds of all this stuff, these complex microorganisms through celestial and stellar and wormhole-based technology and science theories. And that there's spirituality and angels and unicorns and all this other stuff mixed into all the science. And so I always loved her books because they had that. It was true sci fantasy in the roughest form. It was technology and science and faith, and it was intensely both. You know?
Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive. People just make it to be that.
And the thing is, they can be. There are some things that are clearly just fantasy that don't delve into the science realm, and there are things that are just science and don't really delve into the fantasy realm.
I'm talking about faith. I'm talking about faith in a general sense, mixed in.
Oh yeah, I know. That's what I was agreeing with. In fact, that goes back to the argument me and Ben have been having with a bunch of losers on Twitter today.
Yeah.
I started calling out some very clearly anti-theist, bigoted atheists. And they don't like that I've been calling them out.
Well, atheism is a religion in itself because it's still, their belief system and
truly agnostic. If you really are just saying I don't believe till I know, isn't. But what they've turned atheism into and claiming that they know for sure God can't exist is.
Yeah, and if you're. And then if you're the angry atheist, then you really, what are you angry at? And why are you angry at something that you don't even believe in the first place? So there are arguments.
That really was the one we were dealing with, wasn't it, Ben? No matter what was brought up, it came back to him saying how evil and horrible God was. And it's like, you don't believe in God. How are you saying he's evil?
Because they have to have something to blame for any kind of ill that they see in the world. That's why. That's all it is. Real simple.
Amen.
And I get those who struggle with the idea of religion because they don't understand why God would allow evil to happen in that sense, because it is one of the easiest ways for us to fall as believers in whatever faith we have. We go through something horrific and we go, how could you let this happen to me? It is an easy way to fall, and it's a way a lot of us do struggle at times in our lives.
Yeah.
But
I give people benefit. I don't sideline people just because they believe. There's a group that used to come to churches in our area. It was a husband and wife couple, and they had like a YouTube page and stuff. And I guess I researched everything and I knew who they were, but they came to my church and we were just a new church plant. So we were a brand new church plant. So I guess they were just trying to figure out what we were all about or whatever. So anyway, they come through and they leave a review. And if you look at their other reviews, they're just bashing, Jesus, this, Christian, Orthodox Christian faith. So anyway.
Then why are you going to a church if you don't want to hear Jesus and Christian?
No. They're just going to see how people treat them. Was the whole point. So
okay.
So what they do is they go to see how people treat them. Now some of it is a little like, anybody can have a bad day. You go in and someone not greet you, and it's not they didn't want to greet you. It's just they weren't really paying attention or whatever, But they would go review. So then they went on the review. They came back and was like, that was one of the best blah blah blah. These people really seem like they actually want to get to know you, but all this stuff, and I was like, they were wanting to come in to try to bash it. You know what I mean? And then they were like, crap, you can't even bash
I do what you know what you mean, but that wasn't really the point I was getting at either when you cut me off there. I was getting at, I understand that.
But I wasn't finishing my point. That's why. But go ahead.
Yeah. But I wasn't either. That was what I was saying. I was still trying to finish what I was saying when you got in. But because that wasn't what I was going after either. I was saying that I understand the different arguments. As long as people are willing to be civil and have the conversation, I want the conversation. I want to be able to understand how they feel. I want to be able to understand what their drive is, what their motivation is, because it does matter. And most people in every camp, except for the extremists, are just trying to find the best life they can live with what they've seen and experienced.
Yeah.
Which was my point I was getting at. And sorry I cut off back. My brain gets very dysfunctional and I get crabby when I'm trying to finish a point. So
yeah,
it wasn't any anger or anything like that.
I guess my tangential point is just that if Amazon had been smart, they would have just done like a mini series about the Silmarillion and just done the stories in that book.
I don't think do they have that?
No. Their big thing is they wanted to do a totally new story taking place in the Second Age of Middle Earth, which Tolkien didn't really flesh out.
Yep.
Do you want to know why I don't believe that? That it's just that they didn't understand? Why I believe it's intentional with Amazon?
Oh, I know it's
because the original contract with Christopher, and I was not a fan of Tolkien's son. I will pull that full stop. He did a lot of things I feel showed he really didn't understand his dad's faith or respect it. He understood his dad's writing and respected it. He didn't understand his faith. And he did things that were disrespectful to that. But overall, he tried. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There were clauses in the contract saying you can't change these certain things. You can't alter these certain things of the story. You have to respect the original content. They waited till a couple days after he died, and the granddaughter had said she doesn't care. She doesn't believe in that stuff anyways. And then they switched everything. So they literally used a man's death to manipulate a contract they signed with him to alter his father's writing and work and legacy.
Yeah, Amazon it's gonna be hot garbage. I can look at it and tell it's gonna be hot. I mean, I guess you can. People will say, "Well, you gotta give it a try." No, I'm not gonna. It's like Disney. I don't.
No, you don't.
Yeah, I don't need to give it.
I can't stand. I cannot stand Mecca Random, but she's right about, movies are not mandatory, shows are not mandatory. We have no obligation to see what you're producing.
And plus, it's like we've all seen over the past 10 years. We all can spot the signs of when something's going to be changed.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's like I feel bad for I'm in a band with a buddy, and he is hardcore. Like, I'm trying to get him to come on stream with me sometimes, but his studio, it's like Tolkien just threw up in his studio, all books all over the place, everything, and he's a hardcore fan. And I feel sad just as a fan of anything that Tolkien even got. He got same thing. He just got it's not everything else is okay, franchises, Star Wars, Star Trek, Transformers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, whoever it is, Power Rangers, whatever. But it's this is not. This is this is classic literature, and you're trying to use that now. That's the wrong of all wrongs.
Okay. Do you want to know why I have a problem even trying to respect, and I'm not bashing the man because I don't think he got it, but do you know what turned me off of Christopher Tolkien for a long time? 80s and 90s. He did tarot cards and spiritualist stuff to Lord of the Rings.
That's odd.
And I remember seeing him then going, this is not what he believed, and this does not honor his father's beliefs. You know?
That's peculiar.
I think it's literally, I don't think it was malicious, though. The more I looked at him and I looked at his life, I don't think it was ever meant in a malicious way. I think it just, he didn't get the religious and Christian aspect, and he saw spiritualism as all kind of the same.
Yeah,
and the longer I went through life and I looked at what he did, I didn't think it was malicious. I think it was just confused.
Yeah, because the big thing about Christopher that I like was my favorite Tolkien book is the Silmarillion, and I know that Christopher himself wrote a good portion of it. Because,
but the thing I liked about Christopher was that he actually honored the way the mythology of the world was created, even if it was a more Christian-based mythology. He kept that mythology, and he didn't change it to match his view of the world.
Yeah, because you could definitely see everything his father had put into it. I mean, it was, even just the beginning of the Silmarillion just has all these layers of beauty that, I think modern writers wouldn't be able to.
I can't hear anybody.
Uh-oh. Oh, no.
Well, hopefully he can get that fixed. But no, I mean, those are the things that I get. And, I've got a lot of friends who aren't Christian. I've known people who didn't get that he wrote it Christian because they never looked past the books to see the author.
Yeah. Well, I feel like a lot of those are the folks that Amazon's trying to appeal to.
I don't think you can truly understand the morality story of Lord of the Rings without that religious side, though, either.
Yeah. No,
and
totally.
So I think, well, I understand their viewpoint of some people don't want to know the details of the person who created something. They just want to enjoy the art. And I get that argument from a moral and ethical standpoint. I don't tend to agree with it, even though I will try to separate the artist from the art. I think you also need to have a bit of understanding about what worldview they were trying to tell, because it makes a difference in how you see the story.
Oh, definitely. Just the overall, again, going through the Silmarillion, you look at just the themes of the overall theme of all the stories in there. It's the idea of, the earth has been marred by sin, suffering, and that ultimately people who are considered the faithful are basically, I guess, kind of fighting the losing battle until the end.
By the way, you do know there's actually a Christian band named Erwin, right?
Erwin?
There's actually a Christian band named it.
You mean Eowyn?
Yeah. You gotta remember, I have troubles. You gotta remember certain sounds don't come out right with my lip here.
I didn't know that.
I thought I told you that before. Yeah. The reason why my lips aren't the same color is because I had a massive tent pole go through my lip as a little kid and chipped the teeth behind it after I cut a hole out.
Jesus, you've been through everything.
To be fair, that one was kind of me and my sister's fault. Okay, we weren't very old. We were very rowdy kids. And we were trying to recreate the cliff scene from Princess Bride with tent poles. Okay. And my sister tripped and the tent pole went through the lip. Cut this big hole out of it. Because you know those old metal tent poles?
Yeah.
Cut the hole out of the lip and chipped the teeth behind it and broke part of the gums. That was the last time I used tent poles for sword fighting.
But you can probably tell though that the Silmarillion is probably my favorite book of all time. I even love it more than Lord of the Rings.
It's in my favorites. I would not call it my favorite because there's a lot of books I really, really love. And
I just love the way it's constructed as like a Catholic mythos. It makes you can see the DNA of different mythologies, but you can also definitely see that specific Catholic tone consistent throughout it. And
I think that's the thing is, I think even though his son didn't get you don't crisscross certain spiritualities with Christian because it's not considered respectful to either. I think his son really did try to keep this. I think his son really did try to keep the original base point of the mythos accurate. Whether he understood it or not, he tried to stick to it and stick to how his father wrote it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Well,
I think I'm getting it. I think I get annoyed also by one of the concepts I get annoyed with stuff like Rings of Power is just from my own personal nitpicky point of view. It's like I'm seeing shit in the previews about how it's like, okay, we're building up how powerful and horrible Sauron is, and I'm like, okay, but what about Morgoth? He's technically the original. He's the one who's he's the cause of suffering and evil. He's the original source. Sauron was his bitch. And it's like they barely mention Morgoth in the visual stuff. I think they mentioned Morgoth once in the extended version of the movies of Lord of the Rings. Legolas refers to the Balrog as a Balrog of Morgoth, and I'm like, okay, well, I appreciate that,
Balrog.
It's Morgoth is the big baddie.
The thing is, I think there are fan stories that are actually good. Obviously, this isn't going to be, but I actually enjoyed After the King, which was a collection of mini stories written in tribute to Lord of the Rings from a whole bunch of authors who grew up loving it. And it wasn't a bad collection. Not all of them were perfect to it, but they tried, And it was clearly they loved what they were writing about. That's what I think it needs to be. I don't mind fan stories. I don't mind talking about it, all that stuff. But you gotta care about it. You gotta want to believe it,
I doubt many people who would be fans of the Amazon series would be able to recognize subtleties like the fact that Aragorn is very obviously you could definitely compare him to Jesus in terms of his overall origin. He's the last of a lost bloodline of kings.
And he's been told he's destined to eventually stand for certain things by doing certain things, and he fears his fate, which even biblically it talks about Jesus begging, do I have to really do this? Not that he wasn't willing to, but because it was frightening. And even the great power, is there another way,
Yep.
And that's just becoming human. That's just having that human side of you go, please don't let me go through this.
Oh, definitely. And also the fact that you think about Aragorn when he first arrives at Minas Tirith, he doesn't enter the city because there's contention about the fact that the steward of the city doesn't recognize him as the legitimate heir. That very much relates to the concept of Jesus is the last of the line of David.
You know what I saw with that, especially since those cities. Yeah, I thought it was going back to when Jesus went to his home city, and because they all knew him, they didn't have the faith in him needed for him to perform his miracles.
Yeah. And also, I mean, hell, Aragorn, when he gets to Minas Tirith, first thing he does is he starts laying hands on the sick and injured and healing them. You know, just touches like that. Like, you can see a lot of the mirroring going on.
God, and I think a lot of people in the chat are seeing how big of a nerd group we are. I mean,
well, to be fair, I don't think anybody's watching us right now. Because
he said he was going to watch in chat.
I didn't advertise the stream well, so. And I mean, this is a day after my usual day, so I mean, it actually makes me more free to nerd out, knowing that I'm not being watched at the moment.
That's because you're a very, very strange little man.
I'm not little. But I am strange.
How tall are you?
5'7".
Not little.
I'm average sized.
You're shorter than I am.
Height-wise.
Actually, under 5'8" is short for a man.
I'm tall for a dwarf.
I mean, you're average height for a woman, but you're shorter than I am.
Look, I'm aware of the fact that I'm not as tall as a Numenorian, okay? The average Numenorian was like 6 foot.
You know I have to torment you, right?
Yes.
It is a requirement of us streaming.
And that's why after this stream, I'm gonna bug you with more Element Blade mythology.
If you want to sit and talk to me about what you wrote after the stream, I have a little time right now.
Well, you know, no, the big thing is I want to give you a chance to look at it so that we can actually, you know, chit chat about it. Because even the guy I'm technically working on it with hasn't read everything I wrote. Because he was just like, he looked at like the first part of it. He was like, okay, you know, I get it. But I was very inspired when I wrote the Mythic Era. I just started combining aspects of a lot of different.
I'm really trying not to laugh at you, and it's not working.
Well, you know, I'm very verbose.
Sure, let's go with that.
And again, I combined a lot of elements of different mythologies, including bits of like Japanese and Chinese mythology.
As much crap as I give you, though, you know how much I actually love all this.
Well, I figured you would. That's why I, you know, I know you're into mythology like I am, so I figured you'd be able to appreciate it.
I have been, you know, when certain things happen, your brain just doesn't want certain things.
Yes.
I've had one moment I've actually managed to write or read anything from anyone since Dad died. My brain just doesn't want to focus. It can't handle it right now.
I mean, that's understandable.
It's frustrating. You know how much I love to write. You've seen some of my poems and stuff I've showed you. I am a weird literature nerd.
I'm a weird type of writer because it's like I'll go long periods of time without writing, and then I'll write something when I'm like really inspired, and I'll keep going for like a couple of weeks.
That's really not that weird as you think.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's kind of lazy.
Well, writers are a very fickle group. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, because it's like I've been told before, like I should try to practice writing even when I don't want to. But it's like I hate when I write when I do that.
People who say that don't really. And please don't take this as me trying to be hateful to somebody or anything.
No.
But I feel like the people who say things like write whether or not you're inspired are the people who really don't understand creativity. Because
you know.
Doing something artistic, writing something, making, painting, beading, whatever you do, when you're not inspired, leads to shit product.
Yeah, that's basically
Because-
it with me.
Because you need that creative flow.
Yeah. It's like there comes a point where you've got this idea and all of a sudden it's like it's just kind of flowing out of you. Versus like when you're trying to force it, it's like it just comes off. You just start hating everything.
I could
you
make
put
so many
down.
really, really crude analogies with the way you just described it. You know that, right?
I thought about that actually. The second I said it.
You're like, God, her
Super weird.
mind's gonna go straight to the gutter with this, right?
Well, I just knew when I used the word flowing.
I mean,
Lord Almighty. But you know, Element Blade, it's gonna be badass.
you know when I do these jokes and I say these kinds of things, or do like I just did, you know what I hear in my head is from Fluffy's racist gift basket joke, where he's explaining the prank to the woman at the hotel register, and she's going, "Y'all need Jesus," at him.
Oh Jesus! That guy? He's evil, you know.
Yeah, I think that guy was like trying to like verbally throw up bigotry on my feed and didn't like that I just said fuck you and blocked him for it. Look, I mean, the post he came to laid out the terms of how I will talk to you. I will not talk to you if you have to bash on others' religion or cannot describe your viewpoint without having to put others down. As soon as he started doing that, I gave him a few chances to correct his actions, and then I blocked him.
That was why I was amused when he wrote something like, "Oh, blocked me." Well, so much for open discourse. It's like, you know.
He wasn't having open discourse. He was bad-mouthing anyone who disagreed. And every time I said anything, he said, "Oh, that doesn't count. That's not allowed to be used." It's like, no, you don't get to set the terms. You don't get to set the terms on my feed, first of all. Second of all, you don't get to explain somebody else's faith to them. And then when they explain to you what it actually means, go, "Well, you don't get to have that argument. That argument's not valid." It's my faith, fucker.
It reminds me of like when I was a kid and I would play video games with this guy like I was buddies with, who like you'd play a fighting game like Tekken, and like I would use certain moves to win the match, but it was like I tended to repeat a move that like always got him, and you'd be like, "Well, that's it. Like this next round, you're not allowed to use that move." I'm like, "I'll use whatever I need to use to win." You know, like that's how it works.
You know, and I get that. While at the same time, you know, we were Street Fighter kids, and we got to the point all of us agreed nobody played Bison because his attack move made the whole screen unplayable, and you had to like find a way to like hover and air above him several seconds, and it was impossible. And so you really could cheat your way to a win in every single battle if you used him and knew how to.
I remember in college, I used to piss off a buddy of mine when I'd play him in Tekken because I played as a Christy Montero. And like Christy, she has like capoeira moves. And they would always like, you know, you could just go do these endless combos with her. And it used to piss him the fuck off. Like, I think he like slammed the controller down at one point.
Yeah.
He was just...
Also, by the way, one of the greatest anime scenes in a movie ever is the shower scene followed by the fight in the Street Fighter animated movie.
That's funny. I just saw that on social media recently. It's so weird that you brought that up.
No, that's been one of my favorite battle scenes in an anime movie since I was a kid and it came out. So,
Yeah.
If Street Fighter gets mentioned, even if I mentioned it, I end up talking about that because I love that movie. And I have the Street Fighter series too, by the way.
It's so weird how like in terms of like movie video game adaptations, they've never done a good one for Mortal Kombat or for Street Fighter.
Not live action. It has to be animated to get good for it. Because
Mortal
animated
Kombat, you could do a good one for Mortal Kombat if you just stuck to the lore.
You could if you knew what you were doing. You could for Street Fighter if you knew what you were doing. The problem is they don't. And the only good Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat stuff is things you get from anime.
Yeah.
You don't have good live action adaptations of them. You just don't.
Yeah. I still laugh at the Mortal Kombat 90s movies. Same with the second Resident Evil movie. There's a lot of folks out there who like the second Resident Evil movie, and I can't help but laugh at it because it's like a repeat of the 90s Mortal Kombat movies. It's so
Lord.
absurd. Yeah, I recently watched reviews on the old Mortal Kombat, the old Resident Evil movies. The only good one was number 1. And even then, it wasn't game accurate, but it was at least a decent movie. The rest of them just went way too far into left field. They couldn't decide whether or not Mila Jovovich had superpowers or not. And Wesker became a joke. Yeah. I know, it's so interesting. You're so captivated.
Oh, I was just thinking I could have so much fun with this. Trending, respect my sex, which is a battle between feminists and trans people.
Uh-oh.
I could have so much fun with
boy.
trashing both sides on that one so easily. You know that?
Well, it's the old, it's kind of like,
oh God.
Like, I always liked Young Ripa's philosophy when it came to that, where he's like, if you see two of your enemies fighting, just let them go at it. Because they're gonna, it's gonna work in your favor.
Yeah, but to a degree, sometimes it's fun just to poke them a little and let them rip into each other harder.
Well, it's like, nothing.
And sometimes if you do it right, you can end up benefiting off it and getting more people following you.
Well, it's like the main thing that can defeat wokeness is wokeness itself.
Oh, Lord.
It's a self-defeating ideology. Because eventually, once they run out of external enemies, they'll start attacking each other from within. They're kind of like beta fish. Oh, beta fish. Yeah, those things, good lord. Yeah. Well, let's see. It is about that time for us to wrap this up, because it has been about
Wrap it up.
hour.
Always wrap it up.
Well, you know that I have personal feelings about that. It takes away all the feeling. It takes away the stimulation. That, they get really tight. They can fuck with your circulation. Especially if you're a real veiny bastard.
I'm just going to point out that when I was in Job Corps, the girls in the dorm decided they were going to have fun. And they blew a bunch of condoms up to full size and knotted them off like balloons. And they were literally this big around. They're not going to hurt a guy.
Look, all I know is I've worn very uncomfortable condoms before.
Hell, some of the girls put them on their feet like freaking socks and ran around the dorm.
Well, I don't know if they got like the jumbo size or what.
No. These were the free ones from the health clinic.
Those really suck.
Okay, again, It's Job Corps. You got a bunch of teenage girls who are feeling randy. They swiped the bowl of condoms from the health department, and then they were playing with them all weekend. We'll just put it at that, okay?
I mean, you got to do something. But I would rather do that with condoms than put them on.
I will tell you, the viewers that we got from the men's dorm watching through the windows when the girls were blowing them up and pretending to hump each other with them.
Yeah.
They're all like at their windows watching like this, trying to see into the dorm watching.
Reminds me of the
check out what the girls
night.
are doing.
It reminds me of the chaotic night I had on my last night at diabetes camp. That shit got crazy.
I'm just gonna say, the problem with the whole thing with Job Corps is you stick a whole bunch of people aged 16 to 24 together in dorms, and half of them are there either because, well, it's about 1/4 of Job Corps students are court ordered there, and most of them are pretty fucked up when they get there, and then you stick them all in these places where they're not allowed to do all this stuff and they have to be professional 24/7, and after a while they start acting crazy.
That's what happened on the last night of diabetes camp, because all the counselors decided to go to a movie and all hell broke loose. It was...
I remember we won a volleyball tournament partly because our rival Job Corps lost one of their star players. Do you want to know how they lost their star player? She got kicked out of the center after her and her boyfriend fell out of a tree humping in front of the center director.
That reminds me of Boys State. Another camp. The two sleepaway camps I went to, it was like being in a
Lord of the Flies
society. Yes, it was a totalitarian society that broke down the second authority was not looking. God bless you, King Leak. You came right as...
I don't want to know how he's coming. Just welcome to the stream. I also have to tell you, when you get that many horny people stuck in one campus, and I don't know why the girls got more and more experimental with the bi stuff and things when we had one girls' dorm to 3 overpacked men's dorms. We had almost 5 times more men than girls on center, and yet the girls got more and more twisted in the bi stuff. I can't tell you how many of the girls in that dorm hit on me. Oh my God.
Look, I've learned through my experiences and my travels that every woman is 2 drinks away from becoming a lesbian.
No. Fuck no.
It's true.
God, no. No. I would freaking cut a bitch before I would touch her that way. I don't care what I'm on. No.
I know you say that now, but
no.
Two vodka mixed drinks.
No. First of all, I don't drink. Second of all, I've been on enough meds that screw with my head over the years. No, I don't change. I find the female body repulsive.
I know, but again, once that vodka gets in your system.
No, you were being absolutely sexist at this point. No, bullshit. That's like saying every guy has a homo side.
Well, in some ways, yes, but only in terms of like interests, not in terms of sex. Like I enjoy Les Miserables.
No, that's not the same as trying to claim that, okay, get a guy drunk and he'll bang another guy.
Yeah, I don't do that.
No, and not all women are either. We're not all whores, thank you. I
didn't say whores.
Well, that's basically what you're implying, is that we're easily controlled sexually.
No. I'm saying that women are...
No.
It's easier for women to have sex with each other when their inhibitions are down.
You have to have the trait in you first. Alcohol is not going to make you something you're not. It's only going to heighten what's in you. And if that trait isn't in you, it's not coming out.
King Leek is quite confused, and he's afraid.
Yeah, you're not going to win me over with that quote. I don't like Ron White. I think he's the least funny, most disgusting person out of the blue collar team. And I think most of his humor just isn't funny.
I liked him a bit back in the day, but like
he's honestly the least funny out of the blue collar guys.
Well, it's the thing where it's like he's funny when you watch one stand-up special with him, but then once you watch like a second one, you're like, okay, I get it. Okay.
That's what I mean. He's the least funny. He's the least creative. He's the most over boring once you've seen him guy. And honestly, I don't mind crude humor, but most of his crude humor isn't funny.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually sobbed when I watched the movie of Les Miserables.
You're more a chick than I am. I mean,
there were some beautiful moments. Although
I have
I managed to do it in spite.
Cried to a movie.
And I managed to cry in spite of Russell Crowe's horrible singing.
I have never cried to a movie, ever. Yeah, I know. He's been moving away from that for a long time. Did you see the one that Ingval did about 5 years ago? Oh my God. Sell them for spare parts. Watch it. Oh my God. It's so funny. Especially when he talks about trying to do medical marijuana.
I never thought I'd see the day that Jeff Foxworthy started moving away from redneck jokes.
He's been moving. No, he hasn't moved away from redneck jokes. He's moved away from the "you might be a redneck." The redneck's still in it, but he's moved more to the storytelling side of his stand-up, less to the quick one-liners.
God, do you remember like a few years ago?
He's been doing that for a while.
You remember like a few years ago, Bill Engvall tried to do his own sitcom?
That wasn't that recent. That was the little girl in that fucking show was the bitch from Hunger Games.
Oh, Jesus, really?
Yes.
Oh, God. Well,
and Foxworthy had his 2-season sitcom in the 90s, by the way.
Well, I just remember the Engvall show. It was just, I couldn't look at him the same way after that. I was like, oh, Jesus, man. That is so sad. Like,
I couldn't get into that show. I actually didn't mind how they used Engvall for the fucked up pastor in Last Man Standing. He's actually pretty good at that part.
Lordy.
But I didn't get into his show. Foxworthy's was a little closer to who he is in his stand-up and who he is as a person, but I couldn't really get into it as much either. Some comedians, it just doesn't translate well to a sitcom when you do it. I loved According to Jim, and his stand-up translated well to his show.
I'm not a fan, but I'm not a fan.
But it fits his stand-up, and I was more of a fan of that era of the stand-up comedians and the SNL before they went all whiny, you know?
Oh, I mean, SNL stopped being good after Chris Farley died.
Yeah, well, that's why I was talking about, Belushi, Aykroyd, all them back in their heyday. It was funny.
Yeah.
And I miss that era, honestly. Well, I think the last final death nail to SNL was when we lost Phil Hartman, when his wife went psycho.
Yes. God.
One of the saddest, one of the most heartbreaking, gut-wrenching cases of a male victim I've ever heard. How much stuff came out about how long she'd been abusing him and the kids, how she treated him and all this, and then she killed him. She was going to kill the kids, and they were luckily not there.
I mean, and it's so crazy to think, because he was one of the funniest guys.
He also was genuinely just nice. He was a sweetheart. That one was one that just broke my heart when it happened. It literally did.
Oh yeah, I mean, almost everything he's done has made me laugh.
You saw the movie Greedy, right?
What movie?
Greedy.
No.
Okay, it was Kirk Douglas, Ed Begley Jr., Michael Fox, Phil Hartman. You could go down the list. This whole movie was about this fucked up family trying to be the ones to inherit this rich old sadistic bastard's money and playing all these games on each other. And it is fucking hilarious. And it's a good movie. And Phil Hartman's in it as one of the most scuzz-sucking money suckers in it. And one of his lines in it is, no. Shitting a sailboat, that's a shock. This is a fucking catastrophe. And you see him say that, and you're just like, holy fuck.
I think the only role he never made me laugh with was the one he did in Jingle All the Way.
It wasn't a funny role because it was just he was such a scuzz, it was creepy.
Yeah, The whole appeal of that movie is just Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I don't know, all the jokes about the over-the-top race stuff and then that was happening with some of the black community in the 90s that were done with Sinbad were actually kind of funny to me. Well, that and the jokes about, and I work for the post office, so you know I'm not stable. Tell him this man is completely nuts. Thank you.
Sinbad, my God, he dropped off the face of the earth.
You know what's interesting about all that? He still does stuff on occasion. He's got more family and stuff like that. God, I love Sergeant Bilko. I love that. That's one of my movies I watch. God, I love that movie. And he's such an asshole in that role, too. Oh, God, is he an asshole in that movie. Well, you know the last live-action thing he did, right? His last official role was doing the voice of the cat for Kiki's Delivery Service American Translation.
Oh, wow.
His last live-action... It's kind of an anime version of Sabrina almost, that he's the smart mouth cat in it. The last official live action thing he did, they actually had to change the role partway through because he was killed in between the days filming it, was actually in Third Rock from the Sun, where he's playing a psycho stalker ex of Vicky Dubček.
I saw that. I remember that episode.
And literally, he kidnaps Harry. They go on the run, and then the next episode, they have to come up with this quick explanation why Harry was just sold to a circus and stuff because he was killed in between, and it was only a few weeks in between filming.
Jesus, I didn't know that was when it happened.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck. Good Lord. Yeah, I watched Third Rock from the Sun a couple of years ago for the first time ever.
I watched it when it was a new series with my family. So I remembered all that happening and stuff. And that was one that was gut-wrenching too, because you look back at Third Rock and several of the cast members that were really great are people we've lost. Like Vicky Dubček was Jan Hooks, the one who also voiced Apu's wife and all the others for a bunch of the Simpsons characters and stuff. She passed away a while back from cancer, and she was only in her late 40s or early 50s then.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's ones like that that's when they die too young. I haven't seen Small Soldiers since I was a kid, so I really can't speak of that one much. And it's not that I had anything against it. It didn't work into my favorites rotation, so I didn't go seeking it out when I was trying to find all my old movies, you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I feel like, I'm really annoyed that they just kept that show going after they kicked her off. Because I really, Roseanne, the original show was funny.
Look, I can't, there's a couple things with that. A, I've never been able to stand her. I didn't like all the jokes in the original show, but I liked the show. Second of all, I'm sorry, but kicking her off for a mistaken identity where she claiming she was racist for making a joke that she didn't even know the person she was making a joke about was the race that could be offended for that joke is really pathetic, first of all. Second of all, it actually made me lose a lot of respect for John Goodman because he'd always talked for years about how, despite all their differences of opinion, he had respect for her. He stood by her for all these issues she went through with public opinion. And then as soon as it was advantageous, he took the show over as his own and doubled his salary.
Fucking no.
And I loved John Goodman growing up. And it's like, I looked at that and went, you screwed your friend of 30 plus years to raise your salary. Whether or not I like her or not, that just to me just came off as scuzz.
And plus, I mean, it's just like she is the creator and the star of the show. It's like, if you don't want her on the show anymore, it's like, just end the show. Don't pull this bullshit of like, oh, we killed her off screen and now it's just about all the ancillary characters. It's like, you know, get out of here with that. Like, I don't appreciate it when you, number one, I don't like canceling people, but then number two, I don't like canceling somebody and then taking their intellectual property and like continuing it without them. Like, I hate what's happened with the shit with Harry Potter. How it's like all these people who J.K. Rowling made rich and famous are basically saying, well, I'll do a Harry Potter thing if she's not involved. It's like, she fucking made it. She created the damn thing.
I don't like her opinion or their opinions. I've never liked her. I still don't like her. But their whining about her is really fucking pathetic also. And in the end, if you don't like her, don't want to work on her stuff anymore. Don't think you can just take it from her because it's not fucking yours.
Exactly. Like, and like that's the weirdest part about the Harry Potter thing is like, it was the first case where I saw somebody being canceled and then their work being almost like stolen from them. Where it's like, well, we love the property, so we're going to keep that going without the person who created it, you know, and it's like, fuck you.
Yeah, but to me, that's just more proof that they should have stood by her.
Yeah.
I'm serious.
Or that at the very least, they shouldn't have, like, killed the character off screen the way they did. Like, they should have at least, like, if they're going to come up with some way to keep it going, like, just have her written out of the show without making it something permanent.
And
like
not
that.
in as bad as a way as they did when she had her fight with Goodman in the 90s and they, like, killed off Dan and then brought him back not really killed off. They had him cheat, all this other stuff, had him not there for most of the season because there was battles back and forth with the production staff and him. And then the last episode, she suddenly says, oh yeah, he died. And I felt like he cheated on me. And then suddenly they restart the show and he didn't die. That was all a dream. And it's like, oh, for fuck's sakes.
That's the worst. You know, that attempt at being artsy. It's like, well, you're just ruining the show's canon for everybody.
Well, the thing is that it was never an artsy show. For fuck's sakes, they spent half of the series doing redneck shit, and even had several episodes where freaking Dan was talking about wanting to go party with the bikers at Sturgis in several episodes. How the fuck do you turn this into some artsy thing?
Oh, Lordy.
Speaking of which, guess what?
Oh, Lord.
Sturgis officially kicked off today.
Like, the
rally?
Party? Oh.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm in the Black Hills. I'm in the Black Hills. Sturgis is the largest motorcycle rally in the world. It gets anywhere from 500,000 to 2 million people yearly.
come from a land of concerts and booze and slow good times. Although we're slowly being transformed into California.
I have never felt safe in crowds except for Sturgis, because those bikers will beat the shit out of anybody who pushes a woman. And I'm not even kidding. They are so protective of the women that are around them. And all these people that bitch about bikers, you don't know fucking bikers. That's not how they are as people. You don't get, I'm a biker chick. I'm a Sturgis biker chick.
I have to say, like, yeah, that was the thing about Roseanne was, like, for the longest time, I didn't watch the show because I kind of had my preconceived notions on it. Like, I thought, like, oh, this is probably just crap, crap humor, blah, blah,
well, because
blah.
her opinions are crap, so there's always that bias you look at it with.
Yeah, but then, like, when I actually watched the show, like, I felt like a lot of the writing was very believable in terms of, like, this feels like a blue-collar type situation that, like, you would encounter. Like, I've known people who had a lot of the philosophies talked about on that show, and, like, even things people, like, the characters have said. It's like, I feel like I've heard that in real life.
Now, I checked out part of the reboot before all the stuff happened with her. And while I thought some of it was stupid as hell, there was actually some places where they got the original characters and stories pretty well.
Yeah.
They didn't. It wasn't bad it was actually better than most reboots. At the beginning.
Well,
and then they went all weird.
The bottom line is we've had enough reboots to last a fucking lifetime. Like,
oh god, yes.
It's time for new content.
Yeah, I've been saying that for years, trust me. But I think it's like, I get to a degree the actors who don't mind doing the reboots because A, they miss their heyday, B, they want to get work again and stuff. I am so pissed off that they want to reboot Night Court, but at the same time, I understand why Lara Kett hasn't gotten work in forever. He wants to do it. He says he wants to make it as offensive as the original and piss on people's opinions. But I don't necessarily believe it'll happen,
Oh yeah, no, like,
and plus, I'm sorry, how do you have Night Court when Robinson, Marky Post, Harry Anderson, and all that have passed away? When most of the best part of the cast has passed away, how do you have the show?
Oh, the dumbest idea for a reboot that made me laugh my ass off, which nobody has talked about it ever, because I don't think anybody's ever watched it, was the CW when they attempted to reboot Walker, Texas Ranger. That was amazing to me, because Walker was the quintessential funniest show that's unintentionally funny because of how stereotypically bad it is. But then they decided to
I never watched the original.
That.
I couldn't sit through it.
The original was hilarious because of how awful it was. But then, like, they decided to reboot this and try to make it this serious modern day drama. It's like, you can't do that. Like,
oh, Lord.
Yes, the Neon Revenant. I always love that. I like that term, the Neon Revenant. Hell yes. Back that on the Indiegogo.
But we just need to move past this. We're going to do everything from the past stuff. It's like, I have no faith in the new Willow series, and I want to because they actually do have a lot of the original cast and writers working on it. It's being done by Warwick Davis.
I mean, they've claimed that with stuff like Ghostbusters.
Willow. It's Willow. Even if you take that and you go look at the fact that it's Warwick and he's involving Whaley and Kilmer and stuff in the planning it. At the same time, it's fucking Willow. The movie and book were lightning in a bottle. These follow-up books were fucking... Ugh. We're talking Last Jedi level bad.
Yeah.
Just leave it alone. Let it be lightning in a bottle. Leave it the fuck alone, because the books are not worth trying to salvage.
Yeah.
They are some of the worst, subvert expectations, throw away canon, bullshit, horrible writing, just stupid ass shit I've ever read in my life. Throw it the fuck away. And leave the movie alone because it was special.
It can't be reiterated enough. Letting plot lines fall flat or just forgetting they exist is not creative writing.
Okay, so the story of Willow is all about how Elora Danan is prophesized that she's going to help save the day, make the world better, and save everyone's lives, right? The second book starts, and she is a spoiled, selfish bitch who ends up getting Mardigan and Sorsha killed. They completely threw the entire story out. And it gets worse from there, not better. I hate the book with a passion.
When are we going to get to read the mediocre Gatsby? I'm sure they'll plan a reboot for the Great Gatsby.
Whenever they rewrite the book to actually fit DiCaprio's personality, I mean,
I'm sure that they're probably thinking of a way to do a modernized retelling of the Great Gatsby.
By the way, that's another thing. I don't like that guy.
Who?
I'll just leave it. Just horrible actor that was involved in that stuff. Okay.
Well, you know.
I've read it too, and I still say that the follow-up books in the Willow series are worse.
Oh, Jesus.
I would call them worse than The Last Jedi.
That's a bold statement.
And I stand by it, and I hate The Last Jedi with a passion.
Yeah.
I'm letting you know how cringe those books are.
You know, TLJ is one of those things where it's like I always tell myself I'm not going to bring it up, but you know, I always end up bringing it up in some way because it was such a definitive turning point to me. And like even when I first watched that movie, I didn't come away from it like angry or anything. I was just kind of like taken aback. Like I laughed through part of it,
when I watched it. The thing for me was when I watched it, I was very, very groggy. I was on meds, and it didn't register to me half the shit they pulled in that movie until the next day when I started thinking about what we did the night before, and I started thinking about the movie we watched. And the more I thought about it, the more angry I was getting.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the fuck did I watch last night? It's like, well, I was on several muscle relaxers, so I guess that's what I can blame for it. I mean, but I remember I wasn't even entertained on the meds. I just sat there looking like, eh? And the thing is, I wasn't entertained with the freaking Force Awakens either. I thought it was dumb. And I actually almost fell out of my chair laughing when I saw that stupid lightsaber of Krylos.
I honestly, like, I was okay with Force Awakens at the time. Like, I thought, well, this isn't bad. And I thought, and it was because I felt like it was building up to something better. But then, like, when I saw TLJ...
You wanted to believe that it wasn't as crappy as it was, is what it was.
Well, it's like, I felt like everything about it hinged on whatever came next. Because it was like that, you know, a lot of people have said it that like J.J. Abrams is good at setting things up, but he's not good at paying it off. And so it's like...
I don't know. I think he's a whiny douche with no skills.
Yeah, he is whiny, and he looks like the kind of guy I would not want to talk to, but
Except for lens flare, name a skill he has.
Well, no, I was saying like he's okay at setting up a plot line. He's just not good at paying it off. And so it's like that's why I was like I was okay with Force Awakens, where it's like okay, the next movie's got to be really good. To
Look, I can do JJ effects. Look. That's it. That's all it takes. Is look at you can't see what you're doing because there's lights flashing in your face and they're moving around and they're streaking across everything. It looks like somebody failed film and photography 101. That's JJ.
It felt like there was gonna be something that needed to be paid off in the next movie, and the second Luke tossed the lightsaber over his shoulder, I was like, what?
Not Ren's, Krylos. There's a reason I say that. His fucking lightsaber is horrible if you know anything about sword fighting or fencing. And because the purpose of a fucking hilt is to keep your hand from getting cut. If you have the exhaust or the blade coming out the hilt, he's gonna cut his fucking fingers off the first time he hits something. It was dumb as fuck.
You know, it was one of those things where it was meant to look cool, and you just don't think about it.
No, I've studied sword fighting my whole life ever since the tent pole. I've literally built and designed swords and stuff over the years. I literally couldn't put myself in the moment. I literally couldn't stop laughing when I saw that.
I was taken aback by the fact that Rey was able to beat him, because I was like, wait a minute, like this is the first time she's picked up a lightsaber. Like how is she doing this? And I thought like this is kind of killing the momentum of him being a villain.
And then there's that horrible red room where it's all the same color on top of each other and ugly as hell, and somehow somebody's got her pinned with a knife against her back and then the knife disappears. I mean,
oh yeah, that. Well, no, like the first thing for me was the tossing of the lightsaber. I was like, wait, what? Like this doesn't feel right. And then the more it went on with him talking to her, I'm like, this doesn't feel right, but maybe they'll do something. I was trying to be optimistic. And then the second she beat him in that fight toward the end. Well, first of all, when that fight happened, where he like just kind of swung at her, I was just like, wait a minute, no, like this, no, there's no motivation for this. And then like when she put him on his ass, then I was checked out. I was like, nope, this isn't gonna work.
it was so Mary Sue. No, it actually really wouldn't, because it really, really wouldn't. Because the way that those things are designed, you have to have a full curve or you have to have a longer guard than that. Like I said, I've been studying sword fighting and fencing and stuff since I was 5. By the time I saw that movie, it had been almost 30 years studying it quite heavily. No, it wouldn't work.
Well, yeah, I was just more put off with just the terrible character choices, and just like how there was so many points where it was like the momentum of the story just got cut off at the knees.
Do you know what the most offensive part to me is, though, out of what I actually watched? Because I did not watch the last one because A, I didn't want to at that point.
I didn't either.
And B, it has a fucking strobe warning on it. So, no, I didn't watch the last one. I'll admit that. But do you know what the worst part of it was to me, honestly? That they tried to capture the playful side of Yoda, and what they did is turn him into a knowledge-hating book burner.
Yeah, everything about that was out of character. They had him, like, they literally had him doing an about face on his entire character throughout the prequels and sequels.
Because they literally had him sitting there laughing, acting like he's burning all the books, saying that knowledge is worthless. And that's not fucking Yoda.
Yeah.
That too. Or the Mary Poppins thing. Oh my god.
Well, it was really also like thinking about the movie again, it was like I thought it was interesting at first the way they delved into the concept of like Luke questioning how the Jedi failed, and it was sort of a good way to connect the prequels to the original trilogy. But then the fact that they went all the way to Luke kind of having this sense of disdain for the Jedi, it was like no.
Let's get this straight with Luke. Okay, he could sit there and face down his father, who's murdered half of his people connected to him in his life, who murdered his mentor in front of him, stand down the man who mutilated, altered, and brainwashed his father, and sit there and go, I won't fight you, and I'm going to try to save you. But he has a vision that his nephew might possibly become evil, and he tries to murder him in his sleep.
Yeah.
That's dark side shit. That's not Jedi.
Yeah, that was as anti-Luke as it got. I mean, the whole thing was he was not the same character. And I mean, I don't care how much Ryan boasted about how he knows the character so well. It's like when he said that, I thought about it and I'm like, it's like he watched the first 10 minutes of A New Hope and was like, all right, I got it. I don't need to watch.
You know what it really is, though? It really is they took Luke, who was a very tolerant, loving, peaceful man, and they turned him into that fucking actor who played him, who's a scum-sucking piece of shit. Mark Hamill is trash as a person. He's a great actor. He's fucking trash as a person.
I would agree with that.
And what kind of person tries to bully, harass, and threaten his at times son's girlfriend, now daughter-in-law, into an abortion because he doesn't want his grandchild because he'd have to pay child support? I'm not kidding.
Oh, Luke.
I mean, let's look at you doing things like, posting stuff about somebody's child because you don't like their politics, about somebody's grandchild because you don't like their politics. You leave kids the fuck alone. I don't care who you hate or like.
I would agree that that is most of Hollywood.
Yeah, but there's some levels some of them won't do, even if it's just for appearance's sake, and he doesn't care.
Yeah. But yeah, I didn't watch Rise of Skywalker because by the end of Last Jedi, it's like it leaves you on this note where it's like, well, how can the story even continue from here? Like, you've got nothing to work with for the third one. And it was pretty much what I was predicting, like everybody said, came to pass.
It was serendipitous. You know why? Because when I made my trip a couple of years ago, I went and met a bunch of the people I know in Fandom Menace. So I went out and had this lunch out in Santa Monica with Jesse Milestone, Jeff Hicks, Anna, and them, right? And oh my God, my husband met me the night before in Vegas. He flew in to meet me because I'd been traveling for a couple weeks and he had to come to an event for his family in Cali. And so he flew in and then we headed out the next morning to go meet them, right?
Yeah.
The movie they were playing on the plane was The Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, no.
And he sat there in that lunch bitching about this movie with them so well. They loved the shit out of it.
What?
He hit it off so well with the world-class bullshitter, Star Wars girl, all that kind of crew. Because he was sitting, what the fuck did they do to Star Wars? And how did they do this? This doesn't make sense. And it's like, oh my God, my husband, you're turning into me. I mean,
I knew right off the bat, no matter what they decided to do with the third one, it wasn't going to be a good movie, no matter what. Because good old Ryan had basically destroyed any momentum that the second one would have built up. So it's like, the third movie's going to have to do the work of the second and third movies. So it's going to be a clusterfuck no matter what you do. And so it was like, there was just no damn point in watching it. Like, even if they had undone everything The Last Jedi did, like, it was still going to suck no matter what.
You know, the whole I'm a Skywalker shit from her after she gets the entire Skywalker family killed off, to me sounds like a really bad Home Invader LifeLock ad.
God. Yeah, and that to me, that was the absolute worst part, was like, when Luke died at the end of TLJ, I'm like, oh, great, now you've ruined any chance there was of redeeming the character in the next one.
They just completely destroyed it. And the thing is, I'm one of those, I don't like the gatekeeping side on it in any of the communities. I don't like the people telling people if you're a fan, you have to like this, you have to dislike this, stuff like that. I don't like that side of it. But
yeah,
don't tell people they can't be outraged at the fact that something they loved was completely changed. By the same merit, guys, it does not help our side any when all these people are going to these people's pages and telling them you're not a real fan if you like the new stuff. Well, it doesn't help us look good.
Well, a lot of the apologists for TLJ, like, they kind of threw me off in terms of, like, the one thing they always love to do is they love to bitch about things from the original trilogy, and it gets to a point where I'm like, so did you like the original trilogy? Like, it sounds like you didn't.
Yeah, that's like, one thing that's weird to me. and there's one thing to say, okay, I'm a fan of things. I will sit there and say there's issues I have with everything I'm a fan of. Every single movie, there's at least one thing I thought was weird or awkward, you know?
Yeah.
Just like every single Star Trek, I had the good and bad I love in it, and the rating scale and all that, you know?
I can point out things that I didn't like from the movies of Lord of the Rings, and those are like my favorite movies.
Yeah, and actually, while a lot of people think it was fine to skip it, I actually don't like that he skipped Tom Bombadil, because it was where a lot of the spirituality of the story came in.
I just really hated the moment with... Oh, sorry.
we have these moments and stuff we can criticize. And look, I'm a massive Star Trek fan, and basically anything before Enterprise, I will watch the fuck out of. I still wasn't a huge fan of Voyager, and I think Kate Mulgrew is a flaming piece of shit as a person. But there's still even things in that I like. I love DS9, and I fucking hate Keira Nerys with a passion. I hate her.
Oh, I thought you said Keanu Reeves, and I'm like, why hate
Keira Nerys?
Okay.
The character she is too much an apologist for anything she did as long as it was on her side. The episode where she supposedly had made all this progress, had grown to understand the complexities of the war, all this stuff, and was starting to make friends on the other side, and then all of a sudden there's this episode, and it was right after she took the baby over for the O'Brien so that it wouldn't die. So she's pregnant with the baby, and this guy that she had harmed in the war tried to come after her to separate the baby from her because he didn't want it to live around her, basically. And at the end of this episode, after finding out that he was an innocent bystander, a civilian there, and that she had mutilated him beyond recognition with her bombing places without discretion, she's justifying it at the end, saying there's no such thing as an innocent bystander. If you were there, you deserved it. It's like, oh, no, fuck you, bitch. Fuck you, bitch. Fuck you and the high fucking horse you rode in on. Fuck you, bitch. You know? Because there's always innocent bystanders. That, by her logic, anybody who was a forced slave or servant in the Cardassians' homes deserved to die with them. Because they were there. It was an absolutely evil thing she said, and it made me so... I was done. I didn't give a shit about her character for the rest of the series. I wanted her to just fucking disappear. I hated her from it.
I never watched Deep Space Nine. I always watched... the only one I really watched, like, the full series for was Next Generation.
Okay, I will say this. I will say the worst two episodes of any Star Trek series, and I'm going to skip obviously anything from 2009 past in this because I don't consider that Trek to me, and I don't care if other people do. I don't, and I'll leave Enterprise out of it because I could never get into it, so I haven't watched enough episodes to legitimately criticize it. So even though I'm not going to bash it like I do the others, I'm not going to put it in my worst and best episodes because I don't have that knowledge of it.
Yeah.
The worst two episodes out of the shows I like, Spock's Brain. Oh my god, and the original series is my favorite Star Trek. But Spock's Brain is like somebody lost their fucking shit on an acid trip and didn't know how to write anymore. It is so fucking painful, it's not even funny. It is horrible. It is one of the worst episodes of Trek of all time. It absolutely is. The other one was The Return of Kes on Voyager.
I don't think I watched. I only watched a couple of episodes of Voyager.
What the whole Kes and that was always a little weird. The adult child dichotomy they had with that and with that relationship, and she wasn't a very popular character. But at the end, when they decided to get rid of her and add 7 of 9, they gave her a classy outro. They had her spirituality, her skills that she'd been developing, and all that had grown, and she couldn't contain herself within the ship. She was too much of a spiritual being now. So she left, and she left going, "I love you all," and helping them home and pushing them several years closer to home and all that. And supposedly becoming this basically sub-deity. Yeah. That was this pure loving creature. And then suddenly she supposedly comes back about 1.5 years, 2 years later as this psychotic, demonic bitch, blaming them and saying they abandoned her when she's the one who left the ship willingly and trying to kill the cast.
Jesus.
It made no sense. And then you find out what the actress who played Kes turned into, and you go, holy shit, she was more the second part. She went to jail for all kinds of stuff, from assaulting cops, drug dealing, going after minors, sexually harassing minors, all kinds of shit. She went psycho nuts.
Good Lord.
And so, yeah, she became exactly what she was portrayed in that last episode she was in. The complete evil, psychotic bitch. But it was such a horrible episode.
Good Lord.
And yeah, I would say that those are the worst Trek episodes ever. And I would say a close third would go to Beverly fucking a ghost.
Beverly Crusher?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember that. I remember the episode when Marina Sirtis got pregnant by an alien and had a baby who grew up like within a day. That one was kind of weird.
The episode was like, what? I'm trying to remember, Sub Rosa or something like that. And literally it came down to this ghost had been trying to woo the women in her family for generations. And yeah, she has this intimate connection with him, basically fucking him, and then telling Troy later about how good he was and how he made her grandmother feel happy and stuff. It's like creepy as shit ever.
Aren't you excited?
So yeah,
aren't you excited about Picard?
No. I would say if I have to rate a least favorite going to every series, with DS9 I would go to, and the thing is, parts of the episode weren't bad, but it was really awkward because for a while Avery Brooks was turning into one of those who played the race card and everything, and then he backpedaled as more of the cast got more racist. But at one point in one of the episodes, they were literally just doing a holodeck episode, which was supposed to be lighthearted, fun, go back to places in time and see what it would have been like stuff, the people doing holodecks. And he had this fit that he wasn't going to this holodeck of people in Vegas because in that time and era, people like me wouldn't be welcome, and doing this whole racist tantrum and say he wasn't going to go to a holodeck program about a place in an era when he'd be persecuted. And it was the most awkward bullshit you'd ever heard.
We all know we've got those racist
it made the whole episode. It made the whole episode so much more miserable to deal with because it was such whiny racist shit. It just made you sit there and roll your eyes.
And from what I understand, the new Star Treks pretty much have all of that and more.
Oh, no. The reason I said nothing past 2009 is going in that is because I would just list everything past 2009 in that list with those 4 episodes. I mean,
I like, you know the YouTube channel Red Letter Media? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do. They reviewed all the new Trek shit, and that's how that's where all my info came from. And it's amazing how Picard is not Picard in the slightest in this new show. He went from being super serious naval captain to this wistful old man who's constantly farting out these ridiculously shallow spiritual isms. You know, like complete opposite of what the character was. And I just find it amazing that, you know, and it's another example of why people need to stop rebooting, because when they reboot it, they're not gonna make it faithful to whatever it was. It's gonna be something new, and it's gonna be something that's a fraction of the intelligence of the original.
There's only a few times I think reboots have actually honored the original. Realizing reboots have happened since the 60s. It's always been there once we got a couple decades into entertainment, you know?
Yeah.
So there's been good reboots, there's been bad ones, historically speaking. But they always used to be, the reboots were on occasion, and they were mixed in with a whole bunch of new stuff. And now it's just all they do. And that's part of the problem now. But in the 90s, there was a couple I actually thought. One, I would say, was borderline. It ended up contention between the fans because it was considered too crass, but I think that was just the modern version of it. But there was so much of the original jokes and the original story in it, it still had the feel, which was Beverly Hillbillies. And that was partly because they had Jim Varney doing it, and he was very into that culture and all that stuff growing up. And he wanted to do Honor because he actually had been friends with some of the cast members, you know?
Yeah.
And so they still had a shit ton of the jokes and the storyline from those first several episodes of Beverly Hillbillies mixed into that movie. And so even though, yes, it was crass, yes, it had them flipping people off and stuff like that, it still felt like Beverly Hillbillies, you know? The other one I would say was Maverick. Maverick? No, Maverick. The movie based on the show. This was based in Old West stuff. The original Maverick from the series was James Garner. When they did the reboot, when they did the movie, the main star was Mel Gibson. The one who played his counterpart in the other main star was James Garner. And they actually brought a lot of the original show into it with respect and had the original Maverick as part of the cast. Thank you. Boom. One of my dad's favorite lines, this goes to the native side of the family. Okay, there's a lot of back and forth jokes about the Old West and Indians and stuff in this, and actually quite a few jokes defending the Indians, going, why were we persecuting them stuff? But one of them is, at one point, he's with his Indian friend, and the guy's kind of as much of a greedy scuzzball as he was. And he's sitting there going, boy, you guys sure know how to pick them, looking around at the land where they're staying. And he goes, yeah, I know. Next time I find a place to live, I'll find a place the swamp so god-awful, maybe then you guys will leave us the hell alone. And it's like, this is just a moment of boom. And there's another one where they're talking about the West's greatest sport. Kill, and I'm not using that slur, I never have. The N-word equivalent of Indian. Yes, okay. He is, and that's one of the great parts about it. Although that's one of the plot points. That's why I didn't say it directly. But yeah. And is that legal? White men been doing it here for years. It's like there were so many really pointed jokes about the culture in the Old West, the good and the bad, that it really hit well. And plus you have Alfred Molina, who's fucking amazing as an actor. Yes, I'm a very interesting girl with some of my eclectic taste. I told you earlier, I like Joanna Whaley as an actress, right? Did you ever see the movie The Man Who Knew Too Little?
Nope.
Okay, it is a spoof movie starring Bill Murray, where he's doing a theater of life production, so he's playing a action spy kind of Bond kind of character in supposedly acting roles throughout the city, and ends up actually getting caught in an international incident, and he thinks he's faking. And the main female protagonist in the movie is Joanna Whaley, Saoirse.
Okay.
But one of the main villains in it is Alfred Molina playing a butcher who works for the bad guys and kills people. And he's phenomenal in it.
I mean, I'm as basic as they come when it comes to Alfred Molina. I mainly know him as Doc Ock.
Oh, okay. I've seen him off and on for a long time in my life. And in fact, I would actually say it got a lot of criticism. I would actually say that a lot of the criticism of the reboot of Dudley Do-Right was because people were so offended at all the Indian jokes. Oh, there was a lot of them. And it basically, Dudley Do-Right was like you combine Dudley Do-Right and all the Mountie stuff with a shit ton of the Indian jokes from F Troop. And it got panned in the late 90s because it was apparently a racist movie. But he played Snidely Whiplash. Can you picture him as Snidely Whiplash? Think about Doc Ock there.
Yes.
Yeah, he was fucking amazing as it.
I remember that. I remember Species.
But, so that's it. And George of the Jungle and Dudley Do-Right are two of the ones I would say I thought the reboots were decent.
Oh, I love George of the Jungle.
Underdog was atrocious when they tried to reboot it.
I don't even remember it.
Oh my god, it was the most awkward semi-live action superhero dog movie. It looked like you were trying to do like Spy Kids meets Underdog kind of shit. It was horrible. I would say my overall opinion of Inspector Gadget was meh when they did the live action remake. It had some of the spirit. They at least used a lot of the original cast and tried to honor it, but it lost some of the spirit trying to make it live action.
Oh yeah.
But there's still quite a few good jokes in it.
And they still have yet to do a good adaptation of Dragon Ball.
This is why I said I never hated the idea of a reboot or remake on occasion. And I didn't mind that in the late 90s, early 2000s, they were doing a reboot of a lot of the favorite shows and movies of the 50s and 60s. I don't mind the idea of bringing something into the next generation. But again, you have to mix it. You can't just do that. You have to honor the original stories, A. B, you have to have other stuff, new stuff, too. And you can't just remake everything just for the sake of remaking. Not everything needs a remake.
And Hollywood needs to learn to stop annoying half of the audience.
But I would suggest you watch The Man Who Knew Too Little. It's funny as hell.
I would suggest that you watch Dragon Ball.
No, I couldn't get into it. It's not my style. But I like I like a lot of anime. I never got into that one. I tried. It wasn't me. It wasn't my style.
Son Goku. No, I have to disagree with you on that one. See, that's the hardest part about a Dragon Ball adaptation is casting Goku is damn near impossible because you got to get somebody who can both physically embody the character as well as can embody the innocent childlike spirit, and it's very tricky. I feel like Chris Pratt, he would lean too heavily on his own brand of comedy, and it would just kind of change the character.
Let me ask you: have you felt that any of the versions of Batman made in live action movies actually really nailed both Bruce and Batman personalities?
No.
Here's the thing: I will piss off our side because I don't like the Burton ones. I don't like the 80s ones, and I thought they were overrated then.
I think
the visuals of Gotham were beautiful, but the overall of the movie was meh.
I agree. Especially I didn't like how absurd a lot of them got. Danny DeVito's Penguin bugged the hell out of me. And I like people love Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. I did not like that version.
I didn't. Personally, my favorite Catwoman is Eartha Kitt.
See, weirdly enough, so far the only live action Catwoman that I've been okay with was actually the one on Gotham. And that's just because
when I say Eartha Kitt, I'm going back to the original series, No,
I know. But I'm just saying Gotham to me got that right in terms of the way Catwoman would be as a child.
I'm going to ask you, out of the actors who played Batman, and I'm not going to say you can think the whole movie sucked outside of this actor, but out of the actors who played Batman, who do you think actually had the personality best of both characters? Not counting animated.
The closest, this is going to be controversial for a lot of folks, but the closest for me was Christian Bale.
He was closer than a lot of them. I would actually say if you took out the fact that a lot of the over-the-top 90s neon grunge era stuff kind of drowned out the actors' performances, the closest in personality to how the comics were written to me was actually Val Kilmer, even though I can't stand a lot of the effects of the movie.
Because if you actually
take his moments, if you actually see Batman Forever, the movie goes so over the top. Geez, there's a reason it has some of the hate it does, is because it was very over the top. It's like they're trying to take the 90s grunge and mix it with the original series of Batman. And there's good and bad in that, but it did miss a lot of marks. But if you take the serious moments of both Bruce and Batman and their personalities, and you watch those on their own and pay attention to how Val Kilmer did it, he hit the personalities really well.
Strangely,
the problem was that.
Sorry.
The last part of my point on that. The problem with it is that Val Kilmer had has a very delicate up and down in his personality and how he emotes.
Yeah.
And because of that, that grunge, that hard over the top, drowned him out in a lot of the scenes. And I don't think it was a fault of his, honestly. I think it was a fault of his acting didn't fit some of the scenery and the music they put it to.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm a big Val Kilmer fan, so I'm going to side with him on a lot of stuff, but actually do love his work.
Funnily enough, I think the one who sucked as Batman, but was an okay Bruce Wayne, was George Clooney.
No, I thought he sucked out loud at both. He annoyed the shit out of me. Although I will piss off our side. I think Michael Keaton's just as bad as Batman and Bruce as Clooney.
I wouldn't go that far, but I do agree. I
tried so hard to watch it. I never saw the Batman from the comics in him, and it wasn't even.
I would agree with that.
I never saw the personality, and he felt awkward and kind of over nerdy to me in most of the scenes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I've never understood why that role was just so popular as it is, and especially since I fucking hate Tim Burton. I fucking hate Tim Burton.
I loathe Tim Burton as a filmmaker.
He is one of the worst filmmakers of all time. He is as poser fucking goth as you get. He does things purely for shock value. He has no creativity in his writing. And the only good thing about his fucked up movies are the soundtracks that Danny Elfman makes.
Yeah, for me it was like I've always hated like the overly dark gothic crap. Like I'm one of those few that does not like Nightmare on Elm Street. What do you call it?
Okay.
Nightmare Before Christmas. My bad.
I hate that movie. I am a traditional gothic. I like the old dark lace Addams Family monsters and twisted mythology and all that. But I fucking hate Burton and the modern interpretation of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't gotten to watch through all of those. I've seen clips of it, but I think he has it okay. But like I said, I haven't loved any of them. I haven't loved any of them because I haven't felt any of the actors completely, fully hit both parts of the dual split personality that Bruce truly was.
I've heard really good things about the Batfleck, but I just despise Ben Affleck so much that I just always avoided them. Like I never watched them.
Do you know what I think of when I hear about Ben Affleck?
Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
The scene about trying to remove dead hookers from his trailer. No bullshit, because I wasn't with a hooker today, so ha!
I've never liked him as an actor. When I first heard he was being cast as Batman, I was just like, nope.
That's how I felt with Robert Pattinson, and I know a lot of people go, well, you gotta ignore Twilight. He's done other good movies. It's like, I haven't liked the fucking thing. I haven't liked the fucking thing he did. And when he said he wasn't working out and he wasn't trying to look the part in the suit and stuff, I went, and I'm done.
No, like that was when I first heard him being cast. I had the same reaction with the Batfleck. I was like, nope, not for me.
And I'm sorry, it was really awkward trying to turn egomaniac Nigma into the fucking Zodiac killer and making him look really creepy. The way that they did him in that whole Patterson thing with the artwork looks like they took Mole Man and crossed him with the fucking Zodiac killer and then just made his clothes really shitty.
Yeah,
it was horrible.
The best Riddler to me was actually, again, the one on Gotham. I thought he was really good.
You know, I will say this one is in defense of Batman Forever, and I know a lot of people will disagree. The clothing was horrid, but Riddler was always supposed to be very egocentric and very over the top and loud, and Carey did do that well.
I mean, that's what he does.
Yeah, and he worked well for that role, I think. There's some of the cast choices in that movie I think were really awkward, weird, and made no sense. But I thought Nigma, Two-Face, and Batman were actually good actors for the part.
Yeah,
I just don't think they managed to blend all this stuff together well.
I would have chosen somebody younger to play Harvey Dent,
but the personality was good, is what I'm saying.
I suppose. But again, best Penguin and the best Riddler I've ever seen were on Gotham. Both of them they knocked it out the park.
The other reason I have a slight bias to be more forgiving of some of the issues that Batman Forever had is because, honestly, I only had a couple crushes in my entire childhood, and Chris O'Donnell was one of them. And that goes back to my, let's just say I liked him as D'Artagnan, okay?
Yeah.
I'll admit. See, I never liked just the suave debonair boys. I never got girls saying that Pitt and Clooney and all of them were hot. I never found them that attractive. I liked three guys, and only one of them was ever buff at any point in his career, and that was Brendan Fraser.
Yeah.
The other two that I had crushes on were fucking Jason Marsden and Chris O'Donnell. And the reason of both of them, and all of them really, is because they all had beautiful eyes, kind faces, crazy senses of humor, and were nerdy and intelligent.
Sounds like me.
Sounds like my husband.
Well, it sounds like me. Yeah.
I always was more of a fan of the nerd boys than I was the suave debonair. Which is weird because I dated all the suave debonair for a while before I ended up with my husband. And they all turned out to be scum. They all turned out to be trying to take advantage. They all turned out to be all the things that they warned you not to go for, the boys who've been told their whole life they're perfect because they get full of themselves. Yeah, that's true. But I've always loved the nerd boys, and so I was happy to end up with one. And yeah, I liked. Do you even remember who Jason Marsden is?
I believe I know who you're talking about. He does. Does he do a lot of voice work now?
He did. He started doing a lot of voice work when he did, the son Max in Goofy movie in the 90s.
Because I believe did he appear on
and
Boy
he
Meets
was the
World?
cat. Yes, he was on Boy Meets World for a while. He was on a bunch of different shows for a while. As one of them, he was also the cat in Hocus Pocus.
Yep, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I always liked him. I always did. I thought he was charming and cute and sweet. He didn't come off as creepy or scuzzy, and he didn't come off as over full of himself.
Well, I just know that he has been doing a shit ton of voice work. Like, he did a lot of the voices in Skyrim.
No, I know he's been a voice actor of late, and that switch from acting to voice acting was kind of something that started going on with him in the 90s, but wasn't popular till after 2000. But no, I mean, there was a while where he like bounced around almost every little sitcom that was being made on different channels and just played a part as one of their friends for like a season or two. He was even in several episodes of Step by Step. Even he just bounced from sitcom to sitcom. But I liked him. I thought he was sweet. I've always liked the sweet boys. I've always liked the nerd boys. I like intelligence. I find that attractive.
Well, so far I'm all of those things, except I'm also suave and handsome, so.
Whatever you say.
It's the truth.
No, I mean, let's be honest here. I'm not a skinny woman. My medical, though, that caused the weight came after college. When I went to college, I had just been in carpentry for a long time. I'd been working on a rock wall and stuff. I was a skinny girl, and I still had this rack. I had all the boys chasing me at college. I had all the guys chasing me at college. Oh, my God. And they didn't last. Most of them wouldn't go out with me because I'd turn them down. I told them I wasn't going to rush into things physically. Or I started telling stories about the stuff I was interested in, and they ran away quick because they didn't like the headbanging gothic chick who did carpentry and worked on rock walls and shit. They didn't want a woman they couldn't control.
I know a lot of men who actually would love that.
Oh, yeah. Those are the nerd guys that would love that. Most of the suave guys, they want a little trophy they can control.
That's no fun.
No, it's not. And so I had a lot of dates. I had a lot of couple-week relationships, but they never went far because the guys didn't want to wait. They didn't want to deal with all the other, and they just got that way, you know?
I used to be kind of the waiting type. I'm too old to wait now. Too old.
If the person's the right person, they're worth waiting for, is my general opinion of things.
Yeah, but I've already fallen in love twice, so I've already been through that fucking ringer. I'm old. Like, let me sample the goods. Damn it.
Speaking of sampling goods, I gotta share something with you because we're having fun.
Oh lordy.
Here you go.
Oh Jesus. Oh, I've seen that. And bit distracted by that as well.
Believe in yourself as much as this woman believes in her blouse buttons.
Why can't I meet her? What the hell? That's who I want to meet.
I just had to throw a little something fun in for you.
But yeah, it is. Oh boy, we are at 2 hours and 45 minutes. So
Okay.
I am.
Well, hell, I'll give you one more screenshot for fun on the way out. In the same vein. Ben,
yes.
Are you distracted?
Oh, I need sex again. Not fair.
Good night, everybody.
Oh, where? Well, let me do my. Where can we find you?
Search the name, look below the motorcycles. You'll find me easy on YouTube. Otherwise, hop over to Twitter and find RoseumQueen1, and you'll see me bitch slapping around idiots, trolls, and SJWs all day. That's about it.
And of course, I am your host, Ben, aka the Fuse Box, and you can always find me here. Usually on Thursday nights. Sometimes I change it up, like tonight. And also, you can find me on Twitter at Nights Outlaw. You can find me on Instagram at Outlaw Nights. And you can even find me on Facebook now at Outlaw Nights. Though, like the entire Indian subcontinent has friend requested me, so I'm running out of friend request spaces. And yeah, be sure to get on this poll. Let me find out what you think in terms of when we should launch, because I really want to get everybody's input, and we've got about a day left on this poll, and so you know.
Aw, King. He says he was about to jump in.
Shit, King. Damn it.
Do you want us to stay a little longer? I can stay a little longer.
I guess it's just I'm running out of batteries. You know,
what Ben's saying is he's old and slow and he's getting weak.
I'm what you'd call an introverted extrovert. Or I'm an extroverted introvert, in that I can be extroverted, but my batteries run out really quick.
Okay. You can always hop in the link still if you have it, because we still usually bullshit a little after we get off air.
I'll tell you though, I'll try to host like another stream within like a couple days. We could like try to make this more regular.
I've got to not do this on my husband's computer anymore. I'm trying to sit here and talk seriously, and all I can see is the stupid pinups that he has popping up on his screen every few seconds on the other monitor.
Oh my lord. Oh, and yes, don't forget to back the Neon
I notice he doesn't say a word as I point that out. He's just standing there like, yeah, so.
But, you know, back the Neon Revenant. It looks good. It feels good. It's,
feels
you know,
good.
Yes. It's like having sex without a condom. It just feels great and natural.
Ben.
As always, I am your host, Fusebox, and we will talk to you all later. Oh, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, hit the dislike button. I want you to hit the dislike button. I'm daring you to hit the dislike button. Dislike the hell out of me. And I will talk to you all later.